Forge Master of Fuses. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 326. Minister Su and his wife. Yin Xiu disappeared from everyone's sight, but Tang Fan, the head of Tang's Mecha, who had been silent for 7 years, came back quietly. Time seemed to favor her. She was a few points taller and had a little more flesh on her body. Although she was still thin, she also had the softness of a woman. Her facial features became more delicate, especially her eyes. When she smiled, they curved into a soft crescent, which was more gentle. In this regard, Ms. Yao, the wife of Marshal Song, was very satisfied. She sent Tang Fan video requests again and again, inviting her to accompany her on the capital star. Tang Fan loved and feared Ms. Yao, her godmother. She enjoyed the feeling of being cared for by Ms. Yao, but she was also very afraid of the endless banquets arranged by Ms. Yao for her. Tang Fan was hesitating. Ms. Yao's video request came again. Listening to Ms. Yao repeatedly crying about the emptiness, loneliness and coldness of her husband and son not being around, Tang Fan's peace in her heart finally tilted. Tang Fan hurriedly rushed from the Savage Star region to the capital star, and then, when he pushed open the door of the Marshal's mansion, he saw 3 layers of people inside and outside. Tang Fan regretted it. Ms. Yao was not as empty, lonely and cold as she said. And as smart as Tang Fan was, she actually was fooled. Tang Fan, who was standing at the door of the Marshal's mansion, listened to the sound of the heavy door of the Marshal's mansion closing, looked at Ms. Yao, who was smiling not far away, and the corners of her mouth curled up with a bitter smile. "Mother Yao, your welcome ceremony is too grand." Ms. Yao looked at Tang Fan's wrinkled face and couldn't help laughing. "It's just a small banquet, how can it be difficult for you?" Tang Fan nodded heavily. "If you cannot arrange these banquets for me, I promise that I will spend more time with you in the future when I come to the capital star than now." Ms. Yao shook her head and said with regret, "Although I am eager for your company. But the banquet is the most important social event in the capital star. You call me Mother Yao? I have the responsibility and obligation to bring you into this circle and lay a good foundation for your network. It's just a banquet, just bear with it. Be good." Ms. Yao patted Tang Fan's hand and dragged Tang Fan inside. Picking a dress, putting on makeup, doing a hairstyle. Seeing precious time being wasted on these boring things, Tang Fan felt a throbbing pain in his head. But when the aircraft stopped steadily at the door of the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Tang Fan still squeezed out a smile and walked in with Ms. Yao's arm. The two of them came neither too early nor too late. In the brightly lit room, accompanied by the melodious music of the violinist, the minister and his wife were holding glasses and talking happily with people. Seeing the two of them coming, the minister and his wife quickly ended the conversation and walked towards them. Tang Fan did not miss the flash of surprise in the eyes of the two when they looked at him. She held Ms. Yao's hand tightly and smiled. "My Mother Yao, is your invitation from a legitimate source? Why do I feel that people don't welcome me very much?" Ms. Yao patted her hands and said unhappily, "Don't talk nonsense. The invitation was given to me by Mrs. Su in front of so many people at the food sharing party, an invitation given in public. So, whether Mrs. Su likes it or not, she must welcome it." However, with the little cooking skills of baking cookies that Ms. Yao had learned from her with great difficulty, she can join this food sharing party. Mrs. Su can give an invitation in front of so many people. I'm afraid there is a deep meaning. "Can we go back safely tonight?" Tang Fan's worried words successfully made Ms. Yao laugh. Seeing Ms. Yao's heartfelt smile, Mrs. Su couldn't help but interrupt and said, "What are you so happy about? Tell me, it will make me happy too." Ms. Yao is a shrewd person. How could she open her mouth to talk about such a private topic? "I was just talking to this girl about the boy in our family who almost burned the kitchen when he entered the kitchen for the first time." Mrs. Su smiled and said, "The girl in our family was also in a hurry when she entered the kitchen for the first time, and she almost used sugar instead of salt. As long as women talk about children, they can never stop talking." The two ladies chatted enthusiastically, and Tang Fan and Minister Su officially became the background. However, the two backgrounds said that they had no objection. Minister Su shook his wine glass slightly, looking at Mrs. Su with a doting face, like a good husband. Tang Fan, on the other hand, was obediently holding Ms. Yao's arm, with a faint smile on her face, listening quietly, acting like a good girl. Olive watched this scene from a distance and couldn't help but curse in a low voice. A bunch of drama queens. After cursing, he laughed again. Who among those standing here, including himself, is not a drama queen? Thinking of this, a strong fragrance slowly wafted from his body. Smelling a strange yet familiar fragrance, the smile on Tang Fan's face froze for a moment. It was not until she saw Olive, who was still as charming as ever, from the direction of the fragrance that Tang Fan breathed a sigh of relief and fake smiled. This moment of loss of composure naturally did not hide from Minister Su's eyes. Thinking of the unpleasant dinner at the Field family 7 years ago, Minister Su felt as if he understood something. He smiled at Tang Fan. Ms. Tang, as my wife's VIP guest, is also my VIP guest. Just enjoy this wonderful time, no one will come to disturb you. Tang Fan didn't understand what Minister Su meant, but Ms. Yao did. She patted Tang Fan's hand and smiled gratefully at Minister Su. This girl is timid. Since that incident, she never mentioned the banquet again. Tonight, I had to force her to show up. I am very grateful to hear this from Minister Su. If there is anything I can help you with in the future, Minister Su can just ask. As long as I can do it, I will definitely do it for you. When Tang Fan heard this, she came to her senses. She bowed her head slightly, saluted to Minister Su, and thanked him. Her shy look was exactly what Ms. Yao said. In the eyes of the Su family, she was a little bit unpresentable, but enough to make people feel at ease. Seeing that more and more guests were coming, Minister Su and his wife hurriedly said a few perfunctory words and took the opportunity to leave. Ms. Yao took Tang Fan and introduced all the members of the food-sharing party. Although I don't know how many of these women really understand food, they really know how to choose a man. Otherwise, how can they control the most powerful people in the alliance? Chapter 327 Su-san. Tang Fan is different from them. She doesn't understand men, but she is a serious foodie. Tang Fan feels that these women may not be willing to share with her how to choose a man. So, she consciously shared her insights on food with them. It's a bit unkind to use something you are good at to fool a layman. But talking about shame in front of this group of people. Haha. Since it is called a food sharing party, these ladies, whether they really like it or not, still give some face to Tang Fan, who is good at food. The banquet is not too boring with the sedan chair carried by everyone. The nature of human beings is gossip. As time passed, the ladies' topics became more and more in-depth. Tang Fan knew for the first time that there were so many grievances and hatreds between the top leaders of the alliance. For example, because of the alliance military quality competition, Minister Su and the military had a long fight, so that there was no military personnel at today's banquet. For example, the main reason for Minister Su's fight with the military seemed to be related to Pound Field. Therefore, most of the colleagues from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs came, but there was no Pound Fields. For example, Minister Su and his wife had 7 daughters. Now, all 7 daughters are still waiting to be married. They are lazy and ignorant, and they are also spoiled and willful. Therefore, even though Minister Su was very dissatisfied with Pound Field, he still sent an invitation to Olive Field. Although Olive Field's father was not very good, he still had a second uncle who was very rich, and a third uncle who was a powerful official. More importantly, both uncles had no sons. After staying with Jin Ruan for so long, Tang Fan didn't learn anything else, but he learned to look at problems with an analytical eye. Even if it was a trivial family matter, if it was analyzed with Jin Ruan's thinking, it would become particularly interesting. After 7 years, Tang Fan finally experienced the fun of the banquet. He finally understood why Ms. Yao said that the banquet was the most important social event in the capital star, and she believed that she had the responsibility and obligation to bring her into this circle. In addition to the network of contacts, there are endless first-hand inside information. But no matter how interesting the first-hand inside information is, it can't be eaten. As soon as the starship was pulled by Ms. Yao to clean up, Tang Fan, who had listened to gossip for most of the day, couldn't sit still when the ladies finally turned the topic to jewelry. She whispered a few words in Ms. Yao's ear, and after receiving a big roll of the eyes from Ms. Yao, she finally got a moment of freedom. Tang Fan, who was so hungry that her chest was sticking to her back, relied on her good physical fitness and swept the dessert table at the fastest speed. After holding a full plate of cakes, he hid on the balcony behind the curtains. Tang Fan had just taken 2 bites when she smelled a familiar fragrance. She quickly swallowed the cakes in her mouth and stuffed the remaining cakes and the plate into the space buckle. Just after she finished cleaning up, She felt the curtain shaking. The next second, Olive, who was favored by Mrs. Su, appeared in front of her. "Why are you here?" Oliv's tone was somewhat unfriendly. Tang Fan patted the food residue on his hands and asked calmly, "Why can't I be here?" Olive was blocked by Tang Fan and couldn't speak. A chuckle came from behind the curtain, and a crisp voice slowly sounded, "Anyway, your fragrance can't be hidden. It's better to leave the seat to that lady and let her have a snack quietly." As soon as the voice fell, Olive and Tang Fan were stunned at the same time. Olive opened the curtain and pulled in a handsome child who was indistinguishable from male and female. He said in surprise, "Su-san, when did you come back?" The man called Su-san broke free from Olive's hand, brushed his sleeves, and said calmly, "Today." As he spoke, a series of footsteps sounded behind the curtain again. Olive didn't bother to reminisce with Su-san, and supported himself with both hands on the railing and jumped down, and ran away. Before leaving, she waved to Su-san and made a video call gesture. After a while, the curtains were opened again. Feeling the dazzling light in the hall, Tang Fan couldn't help but squint, trying to suppress the tears that were about to overflow. A short and fat figure wearing 3 layers of lace appeared in front of Tang Fan, and a sharp and piercing voice rang in her ears, "Where is Olive? Where did you hide him?" Tang Fan hadn't spoken yet, but Su-san couldn't help it. "The balcony is so small, where do you think we can hide him, Miss Seven?" Su-san's words were very direct and merciless. But they pleased Tang Fan very much. If it wasn't the wrong time, Tang Fan really wanted to applaud him, give him a thumbs up or something. At this moment, stepping on someone else's territory, Tang Fan could only put on an awkward but polite smile, and watch the show. The good show of the androgynous Su-san confronting the spoiled and willful Miss Seven of the Su family. A strong dragon cannot suppress a local snake. Dare to speak against someone on someone else's territory. This Su-san, of course, has the confidence to speak against others. I wonder if the Su in Su-san is that Su? Tang Fan's mind flashed through the names of all the officials with the surname Su in the alliance, but in the end, he got nothing. After seeing Su-san's face clearly, the 7th daughter of the Su family, who was being spoken against, twitched her thick lips like a fish out of water for several times, but in the end, she said nothing, just covered her face and ran away. Su-san looked at her back, his mouth curled slightly, but quickly returned to normal. The next second, he turned around and said to Tang Fan seriously, "Sorry to disturb your meal." After that, without waiting for Tang Fan to answer, he directly lifted the curtain, and left. "What is going on?" Tang Fan paused, and simply took out 2 nutritional supplements from the space buckle, barely filled his stomach, and returned to Ms. Yao. What surprised her was, she just drank 2 nutritional supplements on the balcony, but there was no trace of Su-san in the banquet hall. Tang Fan felt that after returning home, she had to talk to her mother Yao about this classmate Su-san. At the very least, she had to find out whose child it was. Was it a boy or a girl? Was it an enemy or a friend? For some reason, Tang Fan always had an illusion. She and this classmate Su-san would meet again soon. People saw her most embarrassing side, but she didn't even know who he was. Tang Fan touched his back teeth, feeling a little uncomfortable. Chapter 328 Acquaintance. Tang Fan was so obsessed with Su-san that she was absent-minded during the second half of the banquet. Ms. Yao saw this, but she waited until they got on the aircraft before she spoke. "You've been absent-minded since you came back from looking for food. Did something happen?" Tang Fan didn't hide anything and told her everything about the incident on the balcony. Ms. Yao laughed when she heard it. "I thought it was something else." "So it's just this." Ms. Yao patted Tang Fan's hand and smiled. "It's normal that you don't know Su-san. Most of the people in this circle have only heard of him but have never seen him." Tang Fan said and didn't say anything. If it's true as Ms. Yao said, most of the people in this circle don't know Su-san, then she and Olive. Ms. Yao seemed to know the doubts in her heart, took her hand, and slowly talked about Su-san and Olive. "This Miss Su-san is named Su Yanggang. Although she is not the daughter of Minister Su and his wife, all 7 daughters of Minister Su's family have to call her sister. This Su-san, who is only known by name but not seen, is Minister Su's brother and the only daughter of his brother Su Jin, who also works in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Unlike Minister Su's daughter who is lazy, ignorant and spoiled, Su Yanggang is independent, confident and calm. Perhaps this is also related to the fact that she grew up without a mother and grew up with her father and brother. Yes, like Olive, this Su-san has grown up without a mother. What's more, they were born at the same time in the affiliated hospital of the First Alliance College. Therefore, it is not difficult to understand why the two of them are closer than ordinary people. Tang Fan listened quietly, his eyes narrowed dangerously. Born at the same time in the affiliated hospital of the First Alliance College, and without a mother since childhood? What a coincidence. The perfume Olaf uses sounds special. I wonder if Susan uses it. Ms. Yao was talking excitedly, but suddenly heard this sentence, and she was stunned. After thinking for a long time, he shook his head with difficulty. I haven't seen Susan for many years. I almost forgot what she looks like, let alone what perfume she uses. Ms. Yao doesn't know? Then, what about others? Tang Fan pushed his back teeth and tentatively shared this latest news with his bestie. Unexpectedly, Kenya still remembered this Miss Susan. Although he couldn't remember whether this little sister had that special smell, he didn't forget the life story of this little sister Susan at all. All of them were analyzed and sorted by Qin Yi and sent to Tang Fan's light brain. Tang Fan knew that this little sister Susan was not a female classmate without a story. This little sister, from childhood to adulthood, has been the other people's child in the mouths of parents. Since she started attending the after-school care class, she has successfully entered the first college of the Alliance with various firsts. But this little sister, who is equally excellent in physical and mental strength, did not choose a combat profession, but chose pharmacy. Moreover, he studied under Anna Smith, engaged in genetic research, and had passed the 5th-level pharmacist exam, becoming an idol for a generation of pharmacy students. Seeing this, Tang Fan couldn't help but narrow his eyes and utter 2 words, what a coincidence. Ms. Yao looked at Tang Fan's smile and couldn't help shuddering. Then, control your mouth and try to arrange banquets for Tang Fan. Banquets related to Susan. Tang Fan attended quite a few banquets, but the time he met Susan was very few. He occasionally appeared, but he didn't stay for long. Before Tang Fan had time to arrange a chance encounter, this guy disappeared. Tang Fan was so angry that he almost vomited blood. People didn't take her seriously at all. After Kenya knew about it, she laughed at her for 10 minutes before telling her, if you want to meet Susan by chance, you don't have to work so hard. 3 days later, Tang Fan received an invitation. It was simpler than the invitations she received a few days ago, and more special than the invitations she received a few days ago. Besides the fact that the host of the banquet was named Li Bangsha, it was also special that this was a professional seminar on pharmacy. Tang Fan, who was thicker than the corner of the city wall, was scared for the first time in his life. Tang Fan held the invitation in her hand, and when she was in a dilemma, she reluctantly accepted the bad idea given to her by Qin Yi, pretending to be Qin Yi to attend the banquet. When old man Li Bangsha looked at his favorite disciple who was holding the invitation and slowly walked towards him, a trace of surprise flashed in his eyes. If he hadn't known that the real Qin Yi was trapped in the invisible cage of the Alliance Military Academy, if he hadn't known that someone had learned some makeover techniques from Qin Mian, he would have almost recognized the wrong disciple. Old Master Li Bangsha patted Qin Yi on the shoulder and said with a smile, "Oh, not bad." Qin Yi smiled and said, "Thank you for your appreciation. However, I think I still have a lot of room for improvement. If there are any mistakes, please bear with me." Old Master Li Bangsha smiled and shook his head. "Just follow me and talk less. Leave the rest to me." Qin Yi smiled and took Old Master Li Bangsha's arm. "Whatever you say is what it is." The master and disciple smiled at each other and stepped into the banquet hall one step earlier than everyone else. Old Master Li Bangsha was not a rich man, and the banquet hall was naturally not as magnificent as Tang Fan had seen before, but Tang Fan was more nervous than attending any banquet. After wiping the sweat from his palms on Old Master Li Bangsha's clothes for the 3rd time, Kenya finally saw today's target. Classmate Su Yangang, wearing a low-key doctor's gown, walked over with a well-dressed Master Penkaden. Kenya narrowed her eyes and tugged at Mr. Li Bangsha's sleeve. Mr. Li Bangsha breathed a sigh of relief at first, but after seeing clearly, he gasped. How did the two of them get involved? Kenya sneered. Have you forgotten that these two have a common instructor? Mr. Li Bangsha suddenly realized. Anna Smith. Kenya sighed and said nothing, which was considered as tacit agreement. Mr. Li Bangsha patted her hands and took her to greet him. The small task of getting to know Su Yangang was finally successfully completed with the help of the two nobles. But it was just an acquaintance. In total, the two of them only said 2 sentences. Hello, and goodbye. Oh. and when seeing the guests off, "See you later." In addition, she had to follow Mr. Li Bangsha closely, not daring to say a word or take a step. How bad Qin Yi's idea was. Tang Fan only realized it at this time. Chapter 329. After going through so much trouble, she only said these 3 sentences in front of her best friend. Tang Fan couldn't hide her frustration. Old Master Li Bangsha looked at her who wanted to cry but had no tears, and his eyes were filled with smiles. "Cheer up. Although you only said 2 sentences, your goal has been achieved." Tang Fan glanced at Old Master Li Bangsha and said unhappily, "From beginning to end, you only said 3 sentences. Do you think you know each other? Not to mention, have you confirmed that thing?" Hearing her mention this, Old Master Li Bangsha's face immediately became serious. "I have also inquired about Su Yangyang for you. The 2 words that everyone mentioned most are smart and cautious. You are a smart person and should understand what these 2 words mean." Tang Fan touched his back teeth and nodded reluctantly. Since he had promised Old Master Li Bangsha, Tang Fan couldn't go back on his word, so he could only hint to Ms. Yao to reduce the number of banquets. Seeing that Tang Fan had been particularly cooperative recently, although Ms. Yao was a little unhappy, she still respected Tang Fan's personal wishes. When Tang Fan was chasing Su Yangyang, she didn't even catch a glimpse of her back a few times. But when she slowed down and didn't attend banquets so frequently, she ran into Su Yangyang more and more often. Su Yangyang was different from the girls in the circle. She didn't like gossip or dramas, nor did she like dressing up. In other words, Su Yangyang and the girls in this circle had no common language at all. Compared with chatting with this group of superficial women, Su Yangyang preferred to be alone and eat. After figuring out this pattern, Tang Fan just had to stand at the dessert table or on the balcony. The story began. Unlike Olaf's gloomy and Peng Kaden's high-handedness, Su Yangyang was a little slow to warm up, but she was not difficult to get along with. The only shortcoming, probably, was that this young lady always had only one expression. I don't know if this young lady's facial nerves were damaged or if she had good emotional control. This discovery made Tang Fan extremely frustrated, and even seriously affected her enthusiasm for attending the banquet. Faced with Tang Fan's passive sabotage, Ms. Yao saw it and was anxious. Her daughter was smart and cute, but how could she change after meeting Susan? First, he tried every means to ask her to arrange the banquet, and now he was too lazy to attend the banquet and too lazy to care about others. Did Susan use some kind of potion on his daughter? Or did her daughter accidentally get turned gay by Susan's weird girl? Although others say that opposite sexes are only for procreation, and true love is between same sexes, Ms. Yao is still very traditional and can't accept it at all. She tactfully persuaded Tang Fan. Unfortunately, she was too tactful, and Tang Fan couldn't keep up with her weird imagination and didn't get what she wanted to express. The misunderstanding between mother and daughter was not only not resolved, but deeper. Ms. Yao adopted a tight-fitting tactic. Wherever Su Yangyang is, she, Yao, is definitely there. It is impossible to be alone together. It is impossible in this life. Such strict defense has consumed most of Ms. Yao's energy. After a banquet, Ms. Yao was so tired that she didn't want to say a word. After lying on the aircraft for a long time, Ms. Yao, a banquet maniac, finally recovered a little strength. Suddenly, she had a sudden realization and decided to take the initiative to reduce the number of banquets she attended. My daughter, I think the number of banquets we attend is a bit too frequent. Let's change it from 7 times a week to 6 times a week. How about it, Tang Fan? Is there a difference between 7 times a week and 6 times a week? 5 times a week. It can't be less, Tang Fan. As long as you don't take me, you can go as many times as you want. If you don't say anything, I will take it as your consent. Facing Ms. Yao, who was talking to herself, Tang Fan felt that it was necessary to return to the Savage Star region to hide from the limelight. The premise is that she can get away. Just when Tang Fan was thinking about how to escape from Ms. Yao's clutches, the aircraft had already stopped steadily at the door of the marshal's mansion. The mother and daughter were pulling and tugging, and they didn't notice that the lights in the marshal's mansion tonight were particularly bright. So, when they saw the tall figure sitting in the living room, it was normal for them to be startled. Before Ms. Yao's soprano voice lifted the roof, the Tang sword in the space buckle suddenly appeared in Tang Fan's hand. Mom! It's me, a deep baritone interrupted Ms. Yao's magic voice, in exchange for a moment of tranquility in the living room. Ms. Yao shouted, "You still know how to come back while pulling someone's bathrobe?" Tang Fan silently put the Tang sword back into the space buckle, and when he looked up, he was stunned by the scene in front of him. Although he lowered his head at the first time, the pair of red ears silently explained that someone had seen everything he should and shouldn't see. "Mom, there are other people in the living room." Song Si's voice was 3 parts embarrassed and 7 parts helpless. Ms. Yao paused, looked at Tang Fan embarrassedly, stamped her feet, and said coquettishly, "Why didn't you say so earlier?" Song Si rolled her eyes silently and said nothing. He told himself for the 180 times, "The sky's big, the earth is big, but my mother is the greatest, don't talk back." Looking at the two people, Ms. Yao realized belatedly that she had gone too far and said embarrassedly, "I just want to make sure if you are injured." Song Si looked up at the sky and said helplessly, "You may have forgotten that there is a word in this world called rotation of guards." Hearing the word rotation of guards, Tang Fan's body trembled. He didn't care about being shy and asked hurriedly, "Where's my dad?" Song Si pointed upstairs. "Everyone from the starship is queuing up to take a shower in the marshal's mansion. I don't know if he has come out yet." When Tang Fan heard this, the corners of his mouth couldn't help but rise. "As long as he is okay, I can wait." Song Si clicked his tongue and shouted upstairs, "Mr. Tang, your dear daughter is back. She is really looking for you." The next second, a figure like an iron tower grabbed the railing on the second floor of the marshal's mansion and flipped down directly. "Girl, you missed me so much," Tang Fan said. "If you missed me so much, why didn't you come to see me?" Tang Gang felt a little pain in his knee. It was a feeling of being shot by an arrow. "I was just busy with official duties," Tang Fan said. "If you want to use the excuse of being busy with official duties to evade me, forget it." As for Aunt Zhao, as soon as he said this, the onlookers upstairs and downstairs laughed at the same time. Chapter 330 Return. Tang Gang tapped Tang Fan's forehead and said with a smile, You even dare to make up stories about your father. You are getting more and more daring. Let me see how I will deal with you when I get back." Tang Fan snorted and did not refute. In fact, with her father's family status, it is still uncertain who will deal with whom when she returns home. However, when she is away from home, she must give her father some face. Not saying it out loud is her biggest concession. Although her expression, actions and words are very disgusting, someone's body is very honest. She was still wearing a gorgeous dress, but when she saw Tang Gang holding his stomach, she consciously went into the kitchen to cook porridge. Looking at the busy back of the little girl, everyone's eyes unconsciously flashed a trace of envy and jealousy. At this time, Adam just came out of the bathroom. Seeing everyone's strange eyes, Adam couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. "What are you doing?" Some of the brave ones pointed at the kitchen. Atong was surprised to see a familiar figure from behind. He didn't care about his wet hair and ran to the kitchen. "A fan, take me with you." Song Si, who was sitting on the sofa, didn't care about being reserved and said, "And me." Ms. Yao followed closely. "Girl, take me with you." Tang Fan in the kitchen paused, took out another pot from the kitchen, and got busy. A pot of pumpkin millet porridge, a pot of preserved egg and lean meat porridge were served, as well as meat floss, fermented bean curd and a few side dishes. They were not complicated dishes and were served quickly. Several big guys surrounded them without hesitation, and ate without saying a word. It wasn't until their stomachs were full that they remembered that others were also hungry, and quickly invited everyone to drink porridge together. After a bowl of porridge went down their stomachs, they felt warm from body to heart. Everyone finally understood why the big guys would lose their reserve and take the initiative to ask to be taken. It was just that they woke up too late, there were too many people, and they hadn't eaten enough. The porridge was gone. As for the one who cooked the porridge, he had already finished his work and left, hiding his merit and fame. Everyone could only reluctantly put down the bowls in their hands and drink the nutritional supplements that they had already gotten tired of. As for the girl who cooked the porridge, she had already taken off her makeup, washed her face, changed into pajamas, and lay down on the bed. As for the scramble and desire for porridge below, it had nothing to do with her. It was not until Tang Fan saw it with her own eyes the next morning that she finally expressed the doubts from the bottom of her heart. "It's just a little porridge, what's the big deal? 1 pot is not enough, 2 pots. 2 pots are not enough, 4 pots. 4 pots are not enough. Then it's not enough. After all, everyone should have lunch." After being a cook for a whole day, Tang Fan, for the first time in her life, felt repulsive to cooking. This group of people ate so much that she was so busy that she didn't even have time to talk to her father properly. Looking at her father who was waiting for her to serve him like a master, Tang Fan felt that the fatigue of recent days came all over her, pressing her to the point of suffocation. The aggrieved little girl announced willfully that the dinner menu was fried rice. Moreover, it was egg fried rice that couldn't be simpler. Hearing this, Tang Gang's heart skipped a beat. He might not starve to death if he didn't eat, but if he angered the chef, that would be worse than death. There was egg fried rice tonight, but who knows what it would be tomorrow morning. Eggshell fried rice is not bad, but if you were given a portion of paralysis potion fried rice. Tang Gang shuddered, and quickly exchanged a glance with Song Si, freed his daughter from the kitchen, and pulled her aside to talk. In front of everyone, Comrade Tang Gang, who always had his way, immediately cowered as soon as he left everyone's sight. He was humble and apologized. He used all the tricks that everyone could and could not think of. Facing such a father, what else could Tang Fan do? Of course, he chose to forgive him. By the way, he pulled Tang Gang's sleeve and complained. Tang Gang listened quietly, and the more he listened, the more he frowned. He didn't expect that so many things happened during his absence. What did Grandpa Li Bangsha say? Tang Fan pursed her lips. Without evidence, what can Grandpa Li Bangsha say? Of course, he can't say anything. Tang Gang rubbed her head and smiled. Even if the sky falls, I'll support you. It's okay. Isn't it just Su Yang? If we can't handle it, let's hand it over to someone who can. Tang Fan narrowed his eyes and glanced at the group of people standing and sitting in the living room. What do you mean? Tang Gang chuckled. If you hand over the difficult things to them, maybe they will succeed soon. Even if they don't succeed, we won't lose anything, right? Tang Fan narrowed his eyes and nodded. We can try. The planned pit teammates took shape as the father and daughter talked back and forth. Soon, Tang Gang reported the task of approaching Su Yangyang and Peng Kaiden to marshal Song Yuanqi, and it successfully fell on the shoulders of Song Si and Song Tong. The party maniac Ms. Yao finally found her own place to use her skills. With Colonel Song Si on her left hand and pharmacist Song Tong on her right hand, she was the center of attention for a while. As Tang Gang said, different positions bring different things to people. Colonel Song Si and pharmacist Song Tong found out what Tang Fan couldn't find out, but they soon got the answer. When all the medical records and physical data of Peng Kaiden, Su Sen, Su Yangang, and Olive Field from birth to the present were placed in front of Tang Fan, she knew what the 4 words hands and eyes all over the sky meant. For these data, Mr. Li Bangsha and researcher Yin Yulan came here in a hurry. Not only that, Mr. Li Bangsha also brought all the data of mutant creatures in the alliance. What is the intention is self-evident. The 2 experts, along with Song Tong, a professional, stayed in the laboratory of the Marshal's mansion for 3 days. 3 days later, Li Bangsha appeared in front of Tang Fan with dark circles under his eyes. Before Tang Fan could speak, old man Li Bangsha first gave Tang Fan a comprehensive physical examination. Then, he took Tang Fan's latest physical examination data and went into the laboratory again. 3 hours later, 3 sets of comparative data were placed in front of Tang Fan. Tang Fan grabbed them and read them quickly. Although the physical data Ever and Su Yangyang were very different, the comparison results were so similar that she was shocked. She raised her head and looked at old man Li Bangsha in disbelief. Old man Li Bangsha closed his eyes and sighed. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 331. Tang Fan's hand trembled slightly, and the 3-point report in his hand slipped down. Tang Gang frowned and took it. Song Si and Ms. Yao hurried over. Tang Gang couldn't understand the data, so he skipped the complicated data and looked at the conclusion. Tang Fan's physical data overlapped with Olive Field's physical data by less than 30%, and there was no comparability. The overlap with Peng Kaiden's physical data was only 23%, and the same was true. Only Su Yangyang's physical data was as similar to hers as high as 87%. In addition to the same gender, the convergence of physical and mental strength levels, it was also because the 2 of them had serious convergence in a certain set of gene sequences. This convergence was inherited or mutated, natural or artificial. No one knew. Tang Gang felt his throat tightened and his mouth bitter. He had a lot of words of comfort in his heart, But he couldn't say a word. The strong man, like an iron tower, held the papers tightly and burst into tears. Not for himself, but for the baby he had held in his hands since childhood. His baby didn't do anything, why should he bear all this alone? Tang Yang's silent tears deeply touched the hearts of everyone present. In the silence, Song Si's voice was particularly clear and particularly creepy. How about we send this report to Su Yangang? This special proposal successfully stopped Tang Yang's tears and pulled Tang Fan back from the edge of collapse. Interesting, as Anna Smith's favorite disciple, he has the same set of genetic sequences as himself. How interesting is this? I just don't know if Su Yangang can bear it. Song Si curled his lips and smiled. Since you, the client, agree, then I will do this. Tang Fan nodded heavily, his eyes full of sarcasm. I don't know if it was to Su Yangang or herself. It is not difficult to leak a piece of information unconsciously. But to leak it to a specific client in a relatively confidential manner, even if it is a native of the capital star, with the identity of the marshal's son, Song Si can't help but spend a little more effort. Therefore, when Su Yangang got the news in a roundabout way, it was already 3 days later. It took Su Yangang another 3 days to go from disbelief to suspicion and then to certainty. 6 days later, Su Yangang looked at the data with a similarity of 87% from her hand, and she felt terrible. The name Tang Fan was not unfamiliar to Su Yangang. When Professor Anna Smith renamed number 006, she became very interested in this rapidly rising girl in the file with the same name as her. Others thought that as Anna Smith's favorite disciple, she should have many opportunities to access Anna Smith's files. But in fact, it was not the case. Anna Smith did not trust anyone. Even after following her for more than 10 years, Anna Smith did not give Su Yangang any privileges. The file number 006, later renamed Tang Fan, was always at the top of Ona's filing cabinet. It silently bewitched Su Yangang, especially when the set of data analysis was clearly placed in front of her. Since there's 006, there must be 001, 002, 003, 004, and 005. Perhaps one day, one of them will be renamed Su Yangang. This idea grew wildly in Su Yanggang's mind like weeds, and soon occupied her entire brain. Su Yangang, who always followed the rules, finally rebelled once and stretched her claws to the file number 006 that made her particularly curious. File number 006 was not thick. In the thin folder, there was a physical examination data of Mr. Willie Smith from 30 years ago. 2 physical examination data from 30 years ago, also signed by Tang Meng, but with very different contents. On the test sheet with obviously higher data, there was a string of numbers 945,077. Although she didn't know the meaning of these 3 test sheets and the string of numbers, Su Yangang was possessed by a ghost and took pictures of them with her optical brain. While Su Yangang was trying to restore the scene to its original state and pretend that nothing had happened, Tang Fan, who was far away on the other side of the capital star, had successfully obtained the 3 photos through someone on the Red Moon Star. To be precise, everyone in the marshal's mansion had received the 3 photos forwarded by someone. Grandpa Li Bangsha immediately compared and analyzed the 2 test sheets with Tang Meng's name on them with Tang Meng's current physical test data. Even after 30 years, Tang Meng's physical data had not changed significantly compared to the one with the number. 30 years have been the same. Even for the knowledgeable Grandpa Li Bangsha, this was the first time he encountered such a situation. Grandpa Li Bangsha believed that if it were not for the side effect of falling into coma, many people who pursued immortality would be happy to give it a try. Perhaps, the original intention of this research was for this? As soon as this thought flashed through Grandpa Li Bangsha's mind, he was firmly grasped. After all, the original intention of the birth of many medicines is not consistent with their final use. For example, a drug for treating cardiovascular and cerebrovascular diseases was eventually confirmed to be more suitable for weight loss. This reasonable guess needs theoretical support. It is obviously unrealistic for Li Bangsha to reverse the composition and dosage of this drug. Therefore, Mr. Li Bangsha turned his attention back to Su Yangang. After thinking it over again and again, the old man Li Bangsha, who was old and shrewd, did not act rashly, but chose to save the country in a roundabout way. It is said that Su Yangang has a good relationship with Olive Field, and Olive Field's aunt, who is unfortunate, is the boss of Yin Yulan. Mr. Li Bangsha immediately put Yin Yulan into operation. Mr. Li Bangsha has a precedent of waking up several naughty children in Ms. Zhang Awei. Yin Yulan obtained the visitation rights granted by Professor Tao Bixi with a little effort. So, Mr. Li Bangsha, who finally walked out of the Marshal's Mansion laboratory, finally stepped into the affiliated hospital of the First Academy of the Alliance. Tao Qingxi, the wife of Pound Field, who was rumored to have died a long time ago, was lying in the treatment room on the top floor of this hospital. Because what Mr. Li Bangsha got was not the authorization from the Field family, but the authorization from Tao Qingxi's sister, Professor Tao Bixi. It took a lot of trouble to enter Miss Tao Qingxi's treatment room. But this first step was taken anyway. The first time he saw Miss Tao Qingxi, Mr. Li Bangsha gave her a detailed and comprehensive full-body examination. The moment he saw the examination sheet, Mr. Li Bangsha took a breath of cold air. However, in more than 30 years, the physical fitness of Miss Tao Qingxi, the legendary genius of the pharmacy department, has fallen below the lowest line of the alliance. If she is allowed to continue to develop, Mr. Li Bangsha dares to conclude that she will definitely not live for more than 10 years. Perhaps, it is because of this that Professor Tao Bixi is so decisive in giving him the right to visit. Chapter 332 Talk. At that moment, Mr. Li Bangsha concluded that Professor Tao Bixi knew something 100%. About Tao Qingxi, about Field, about Anna Smith, about. But knowing is one thing, and whether to say it or not is another. Mr. Li Bangsha thought about the silent father and daughter of the Tang family, and thought about Song Si's unexpected decision. After pondering for a moment, he finally sent Tao Qingxi's test results to Professor Tao Bixi. Be loyal to the trust of others. I just don't know if Professor Tao Bixi can withstand such stimulation. Tao Qingxi and Tao Bixi are brothers from the same mother and have a deep relationship. Logically, he should have a deep understanding of Tao Qingxi's situation. But in fact, a doctor cannot heal himself, and a person cannot save himself. It is precisely because of the deep relationship that Tao Bixi did not dare to face Tao Qingxi at all, let alone ask about any news about Tao Qingxi. Suddenly receiving this news, which was accurate information from Mr. Li Bangsha, Tao Bixi's eyes went dark and he fainted directly. After waking up, Professor Tao Bixi threw all the things in his hands to Fang Boi, and rushed to the capital star as soon as possible. The first stop was Pound Field's home. Pound Field had seen how powerful Tao Bixi was more than 30 years ago, and he dared not forget it since then. Seeing Tao Bixi coming to kill him, Pound ran home in a hurry without even asking for leave. But even so, he was still a step late. All the people who worked for the Field family, without exception, lay on the ground. And in the living room of the Field family, except for the chair where Tao Bixi sat, there was nothing left for Pound. Violent dismantling is not suitable for a gentleman like our Professor Tao. Our Professor Tao uses potions directly. What paralysis potion, decomposition potion. One shot will immediately satisfy all your imaginations. This is the most powerful part of the pharmacist. It is also the most frightening part for Pound. You are here. Pound's voice was a little trembling. Tao Bixi didn't say a word, but with a cold face, she threw the medical examination report given to her by Mr. Li Bangsha in Pangda's face. It's like this, how can I not come? Pangda didn't pick it up until the test sheet fell to the ground. The name in front and the conclusion in the back clearly and plainly told Pangda, his wife, Miss Tao Qingxi, has a very fast decline in physical fitness and has entered the interstellar era, a period of decline that everyone is afraid to avoid. In other words, Tao Bixi's lifespan will definitely not exceed 10 years. Pangda Field was shocked by the news, staring at Tao Bixi blankly, and sat on the ground. No wonder Tao Bixi, this evil star, came to cause trouble. It turned out to be like this. Is there no other way? Pangda's voice was very light and a little floating. Looking at Pangda like this, Tao Bixi felt more and more blocked in her heart. Qingxi is such a good person, how could she be so blind as to fall for you? Tao Bixi's words were like a sharp sword, deeply piercing Pangda's heart. Pangda, who had been slumped on the ground, suddenly laughed. Yes. How could such an excellent Tao Qingxi fall for me? But no matter how much she despised me, didn't she give birth to a child for me? Come on. Hurt each other. Professor Tao Bixi's eyes changed immediately when she looked at Pangda. So, what did you do to Qingxi? Pangda looked at Tao Bixi viciously and sneered. Guess. You are so smart and capable, you will definitely guess it. Tao Bixi frowned at Pangda, who looked like a madman, and said, Don't worry, I will know it. After that, without even a glance at Pangda, He stood up and walked out the door. Pangda looked at Tao Bixi's back as he walked away, tightly holding the test sheet, and burst into tears. After leaving Poundfield's house, Tao Bixi went straight to the hospital affiliated to the First Alliance Academy. Because Old Man Li Bangsha was still waiting for her there. Tao Bixi knew very well what a 7th-level pharmacist meant. It represented authority, honor, affirmation, as well as factions and conspiracies. For the sake of Tao Qixi's health, Tao Bixi could turn a blind eye and pretend that she didn't know the fact that because of their different fields of specialization, she and Li Bangsha didn't have much intersection. But when Old Man Li Bangsha told her clearly that Tao Qixi didn't have much time left, Tao Bixi woke up. She felt that she had the right and obligation to find out Li Bangsha's purpose. Even before she pushed open the door of Tao Qixi's treatment room, she had been mentally preparing for a long time. But when she pushed open the door, she was stunned. I don't know when, a set of tables and chairs appeared in the treatment room. Old Man Li Bangsha was sitting at the table, comparing some physical examination data. Seeing Tao Bixi coming in, Mr. Li Bangsha waved to her and started to discuss with her with great interest. Tao Bixi stared at the 3 medical examination data, with a flash of surprise in her eyes. Where did you get these medical examination data? Mr. Li Bangsha was bewildered by the question, and honestly told Tao Bixi the origin of these data. Tang Mangan and Zhang Awei, 2 strange and familiar names, came out of Mr. Li Bangsha's mouth, and Tao Bixi slowly closed her eyes. Some fragments of the past were suddenly connected together. Some of Tao Bixi's guesses in her heart were confirmed at this moment. At the same time, some of her beliefs in her heart began to slowly collapse. So, is that the case? Elder Li Bangsha asked innocently. What does that mean? Did Professor Tao make any discoveries? Can you share them with me? I promise that only heaven and earth, you and I know, and no third person will know. Tao Bixi looked at the old naughty senior in front of her, with a bitter smile on her face. My teacher had 4 assistants in total. One is lying here, one has gone to heaven, and the only ones left are me and senior sister Anna Smith. The Alliance Military Academy has records of every one of my experiments. As for my senior sister, if you are interested, you can check it out. Maybe you can find more interesting things. Elder Li Bangsha touched his chin, and asked innocently with a childlike curiosity, are you talking about her infertility? Or her experiments on human bodies? Or using genes from mutant creatures to modify the human body? Tao Bixi looked at him in disbelief. You? Elder Li Bangsha patted her on the shoulder and smiled. I think we need to have a good talk. Chapter 333. Tao Bixi narrowed her eyes at Mr. Li Bangsha. Why should I trust you, if my teacher, my senior sister, my brother-in-law, can't be trusted? Why should I trust you, a colleague with whom I have little interaction? Mr. Li Bangsha took out several physical test data from his space button calmly and showed them in front of Tao Bixi. Tao Bixi looked at the familiar names on the top of her head, especially the first name that she had read for more than 30 years. Her attitude had to soften. She pushed her back teeth and said with difficulty, how do you want to talk? Mr. Li Bangsha sighed and said lightly, I think Xiangxiang Lake Park is good, and Zhejiao Cemetery is also okay. Mr. Li Bangsha mentioned several place names in a row, all of which were quiet, spacious and unobstructed, and would never be monitored, eavesdropped, or discovered. Tao Bixi looked at him deeply, discarded unreliable places like cemeteries, and finally chose Xiangxiang Lake Park. Xiangxiang Lake Park in autumn is undoubtedly beautiful, with blue sky and white clouds, golden osmanthus fragrance, and chrysanthemums everywhere. But no matter how beautiful the scenery is, it can't make Old Man Li Bangsha and Professor Tao Bixi stop to appreciate it. Their attention is all on each other's things provided. It is impolite not to reciprocate. Since Old Man Li Bangsha has shown absolute sincerity, Professor Tao Bixi also appropriately showed his sincerity. The information and data that Tao Bixi had sorted out for Professor Field during those years following him were handed over to Old Man Li Bangsha. At the same time, Old Man Li Bangsha also handed over the physical test data of Tang Fan, Peng Kaiden and Olive Field to Tao Bixi. The two took the information provided by each other and read it word by word. Those things that were meaningless in the eyes of others had different meanings in their hands. Old Master Li Bangsha confirmed that the field department had begun research on mutant organisms more than 30 years ago and applied it to the human body. Professor Tao Bixi also confirmed that Tao Qixi was pregnant and gave birth, fell into coma, and entered the decline period prematurely. All of this was a conspiracy. It is still unknown whether this conspiracy is related to the Field family. But senior sister Anna Smith must be involved. Old Master Li Bangsha pondered for a moment and took out another physical test data from his space buckle. Although it is not an important thing, I think it should be of some help to you. Tao Bixi raised her eyebrows and took it. When she saw the three words Su Yangang, Tao Bixi couldn't help but narrow her eyes. Others may not know this Miss Su Yangang, but she is not unfamiliar with this name. Born in the same hospital as her nephew, and also without a mother at birth. Too many coincidences made Tao Bixi have to pay attention to this talented girl who became a fifth-level pharmacist in her early 30s. The genius girl next to my senior sister. Senior, what do you mean by giving this to me? Old Master Li Bangsha touched his chin and smiled. You'll understand after you read it. Tao Bixi raised her eyebrows and did not comment. She flipped through it slowly, but the more she read, the more frightened she became. Finally, she couldn't help but took out the physical test data with Tang Fan's name on it and put it next to this information. You don't know until you compare it, and you'll be shocked when you compare it. Tao Bixi looked at the two extremely similar data and clicked her back teeth. If I remember correctly, there is no blood relationship between the two of them, although Tao Bixi didn't say it clearly. How could Old Master Li Bangsha not understand? After all, he had similar questions. I can't say more, but I can still guarantee within 10 generations. Professor Tao Bixi smiled when he heard it. That's interesting. After saying that, Tao Bixi seemed to have thought of something. She took a deep look at Grandpa Li Bangsha and asked, have you told Su Yangang about this? Grandpa Li Bangsha chuckled. What do you think? Tao Bixi clicked her tongue. No wonder you are so generous. It turns out you are selling one product in multiples. Grandpa Li Bangsha was not annoyed by being criticized, and said with a smile, no matter how many times it sells, it's fine as long as it's useful. Isn't it? That's true. Tao Bixi paused after saying that. I have one last question and I want to ask you, Senior. Grandpa Li Bangsha made a gesture of invitation and said with a smile, you can ask as much as you want. Tao Bixi really spoke bluntly. Senior, you should know how deep the water is, but why did you still wade in without hesitation? Grandpa Li Bangsha looked at the two simple words at the top and said faintly, the sponsor has given the order, and I dare not disobey. Tao Bixi raised her eyebrows and reserved her own opinion on Grandpa Li Bangsha's answer. Although she was not satisfied with Mr. Li Bangsha's answer, Professor Tao Bixi did not mind joining hands with him to make trouble for her dear senior sister, Anna Smith, and collect some interest. Therefore, after indirectly confirming the authenticity of each other's information, Mr. Li Bangsha and Professor Tao Bixi soon shared resources again. This time, Mr. Li Bangsha took out the 3 pages of information and the research data on sheath beetles provided by Su Yangang. And what Tao Bixi provided were some interesting research projects and data that she intentionally or unintentionally shared from Anna Smith when they were still working under Professor Field. After the two of them walked around Xiangxiang Lake again, their expressions became heavier. Especially Professor Tao Bixi, looking at the information numbered 006 and signed by Tang Fan, the same thought flashed through her mind as Su Yangang. Since there's 006, there must be 001, 002, 003, 004, and 005. Maybe one day, one of them will be named Olaf Field? After all, Anna Smith dared to use her own brother's seed for experiments, so how could she mind? Others might not understand the string of flamboyant numbers 945,077, but Professor Tao Bixi was different. She took the information from Mr. Li Bangsha and flipped through it, pointing to a set of data and said lightly, if I remember correctly, this should be the experimental data numbered 945,077. Perhaps, this will be of some help to you and your sponsor. Mr. Li Bangsha narrowed his eyes and nodded. Then on behalf of me and my sponsor, I would like to thank Professor Tao Bixi for her advice. Chapter 334 Awakening. Using a set of experimental data to retrace the composition of someone else's medicine is a very difficult task, even for Mr. Li Bangsha. But Tao Bixi can only help so far. Comparing the information that Mr. Li Bangsha gave her, Tao Bixi had an illusion that she had taken advantage of others. Especially after Mr. Li Bangsha put on that humble look of seeking advice, the feeling was even stronger. Do you need my help? Mr. Li Bangsha looked at Tao Bixi's sincere face, pondered for a moment, and said, Zhang Awei has aged 10 years in just 1 or 2 years after taking the improved medicine. The medicine that Tang Mangan took was just a numbered experimental product, And 30 years have passed. Mr. Li Bangsha did not finish his words. Tao Bixi had already received what he wanted to convey. Doctors do not heal themselves, and people do not save themselves. Tao Bixi's voice was very low, with unspeakable pain. Old man Li Bangsha patted her on the shoulder and comforted her. This is not a natural disaster, but a man-made disaster. Since it is a man-made disaster, sooner or later, someone will solve it. In order to solve this problem as soon as possible, I don't mind using my flesh and blood to pave a bloody path for those who come later. Tao Bixi looked at old man Li Bangsha deeply and said with a smile, seniors should be role models for our generation. Old man Li Bangsha knew that this guy didn't believe what he said. It doesn't matter. Let's wait for time to test it. With this idea in mind, old man Li Bangsha took the information provided by Tao Bixi and ambitiously returned to the laboratory of the marshal's mansion and started tinkering with it. It took more than half a month to tinker with it. When old man Li Bangsha finally walked out of the laboratory, he was surprised to find that the marshal's mansion was empty. Where are the people? Where did they go? Old man Li Bangsha didn't find a living person, but stopped a robot. After performing a full-body scan on Mr. Li Bangsha and confirming his identity and authority, the robot finally gave Mr. Li Bangsha an answer. All the living people in the marshal's mansion went to the Alliance military headquarters to attend the medal ceremony for Mr. Song Si and Mr. Tang Gang. The two have been on the front line for so many years. Even if they have no merits, they have worked hard. Even if they have not worked hard, they are tired. It is normal to award medals. However, not taking him. Humph. Mr. Li Bangsha also has a temper. Sending video messages to everyone while others are watching the ceremony. It was only Mr. Li Bangsha who would be beaten if it were someone else. Just by watching the video messages one after another, Mr. Li Bangsha actually watched the entire medal ceremony. By the way, he also witnessed the wonderful moment when Tang Gang and Song Si were promoted from colonels to major generals. This is a treatment that many people desire but cannot have. When he thought that Lan Yuan, that stinky boy, couldn't see it, but he saw it, Mr. Li Bangsha was so happy that his beard stood up. The bad old man, Li Bangsha, was so bad that he sent a video to Lan Yuan to show off, which made Lan Yuan ignore him for more than half a month. For many people, being a major general is an honor. But for Tang Gang and Song Si, being a major general is more like a responsibility. Especially when Marshal Song Yuanshi patted the star of the general on their shoulders. The two young and promising major generals looked at each other. They felt the star of the general burning on their shoulders. The greater the ability, the greater the responsibility. The two of them still have a long way to go to become a qualified general. However, they are not moving forward alone. The two of them are company, and Marshal Song Yuanshi is watching from the side and helping them from time to time. Their road is not difficult to walk. It's just that it's a bit rushed. As soon as the awarding ceremony was over, Marshal Song Yuanshi stuffed the Savage Star domain into their hands. The newly appointed Major General and the group of recruits in the Savage Star domain, probably, they can be regarded as complementing each other. Soon, the two new forces collided fiercely, producing different sparks and giving Song Yuanshi and Song Yuanshui different surprises. However, that was a story for later. Now, everyone's attention is focused on Mr. Li Bangsha. With the off-field assistance of Professor Tao Bixi, Mr. Li Bangsha actually made a major breakthrough. However, looking at the milky white potion, no one dared to move. It's not to question Mr. Li Bangsha's professional ability, but they are not Tao Kingxi or Tang Mangan. I don't know if they are willing to open their eyes and see this world more than 30 years later. And, at the cost of their lives. Awkwardly, after a long silence, it was Tao Bixi who took the initiative to stand up and take the potion that had not been tested on humans. Because, everyone thought that olive field, who was greasy and powdered, was useless. After knowing this, he told his aunt, Tao Bixi, if it were me, between lying in the treatment cabin for a lifetime and being awake for a while, even if it was only 1 minute, I would choose the latter without hesitation. These two sentences deeply stimulated Tao Bixi and prompted her to make a decision, the decision to give Tao Kingxi the medicine. But after getting the medicine, Tao Bixi did not have enough courage. In the end, it was Olivefield who fed the milky white medicine into Tao Kingxi's mouth little by little. After the milky white medicine was all poured into Tao Kingxi's mouth, Tao Bixi found that Olivefield's forehead and back were covered with sweat. Seeing Olive's nervousness, Tao Bixi relaxed a little. No matter whether Kingxi could wake up or not, At least we have tried. Olivefield nodded with a wry smile, but his eyes never moved away from Tao Qingxi. Maybe it was only a few minutes, or maybe a few centuries. Tao Qingxi's pale fingers moved slightly. It was just a small movement, but it made Olivefield burst into tears. Tao Bixi looked at Tao Qingxi, then at Olive, and whispered, "I was wrong. She shouldn't have avoided Qingxi because of her momentary timidity. If she could have discovered Qingxi's fault earlier, if she could have met Grandpa Li Bangsha earlier, if she had conducted research in this area. Unfortunately, there is no if." Tao Bixi took a deep breath, found Grandpa Li Bangsha's optical computer number, and took the initiative to contact Grandpa Li Bangsha for the first time. The two level 7 pharmacists joined forces, and although they experienced some twists and turns, Tao Qingxi finally saved him. Tao Qingxi, who woke up, looked at Olive for the first time, with tears in his eyes. "Thank you for visiting me often." This simple sentence successfully made Olive burst into tears, and also successfully made Tao Bixi blush. Tao Qingxi looked at Tao Bixi's ashamed expression and smiled. "I heard that you smashed the Field family several times." Chapter 335. This is already very good. Tao Bixi didn't expect that the first sentence Tao Qingxi said to her was this. She was stunned for a long time before she nodded with a red face. Tao Qingxi asked softly, "Do you feel relieved?" Tao Bixi nodded. Tao Qingxi smiled. "I think so too." Tao Qingxi, who is always gentle and generous, did not look back and did not accuse her of acting impulsively. It was already abnormal enough. Saying "I think so too" successfully surprised Tao Bixi. "Senior, can you come over?" As soon as Mr. Li Bangsha, who didn't know what was going on, came over, he was pulled aside by Professor Tao Bixi and carefully asked about the side effects of the medicine, especially the side effects that change people's personality. After getting a negative answer from Mr. Li Bangsha, Tao Bixi looked at her sister with a wrong look. Tao Qingxi was such a smart person that he knew what Tao Bixi was thinking when he saw her eyes. Without explaining, he just took Tao Bixi's hand and told a story. A story that belonged to her. The story started more than 30 years ago. At that time, Tao Qingxi and Tao Bixi were both young girls about to graduate. So when senior sister Anna Smith asked them to do a full-body checkup for the pharmacist level assessment, the sisters did not doubt it even though they found a lot of fertility tests. The checkup was done at the first academy of the Alliance by Anna Smith's classmates, so the results came out very quickly. But as the parties involved, Tao Bixi and Tao Qingxi did not see their own physical examination reports. The report went directly from Anna Smith to their teacher, Professor Jim Field. Although they were sisters with the same father and mother, the physical examination results of Tao Qingxi and Tao Bixi were different, especially in terms of fertility. Tao Qingxi was more than one level higher than Tao Bixi. Jim Field was very satisfied with the result. He wrote the names of Tao Qingxi and Tao Bixi on the 2 internship recommendation forms that he had prepared long ago, and invited his eldest son, who was also in the Capital Star, to visit the school. Just after the starship that sent Tao Bixi to the Blackwater Army for internship left, Poundfield came to Jim Field's laboratory for a visit and study. The person who was responsible for receiving him was Tao Qingxi. Tao Qingxi was smart, beautiful, kind, generous, and considerate. As expected, Poundfield began to have a secret crush on this girl. Although Poundfield was not smart, he was warm and sincere to others. Although he always made some mistakes, he was not offensive. If things went their way, the two might not get together. But Jim and Anna did not give them a chance to develop slowly. When Pound's home visit was about to end, Jim hosted and Anna came forward to hold a farewell banquet for Poundfield. After 3 rounds of wine and 5 kinds of dishes, under everyone's instigation, Poundfield confessed to Tao Qingxi seriously. Although everyone was making a fuss, Tao Qingxi, who had always been sober, still withstood the pressure and did not agree. Seeing that the situation was not right, senior sister Anna Smith tried to smooth things over, drove away the companions who were making trouble, pulled her aside, and acted as a peacemaker. The young and ignorant Tao Qingxi was quite moved and opened her heart to her. Who knew that after drinking the drinking water handed to her by this good senior sister, she actually got drunk. It was also this good senior sister who asked people to call Poundfield and asked him to send her home together. It was also this good senior sister who, after sending her back to the dormitory, pulled Poundfield to sit in her living room and said that they wanted to have a good chat. She watched Poundfield also drink the spiked drinking water handed to him by Anna. Seeing that Poundfield was just like her, with a weak body, she let Anna Smith manipulate her. Anna Smith dragged Pound to her bed, faced her resentful eyes, poured her a potion with a strange taste, and slowly took out an aromatherapy candle from her space buckle and lit it. When the ambiguous aroma drifted away, Anna Smith had already walked away leisurely. Tao Qingxi clearly felt the strange smelling potion and the effect of the ambiguous smell on her body. She could even feel the effect of the aroma on Pound. She thought she knew what she was about to encounter. But she didn't expect that she would encounter more than just that. She floated up and down for 3 whole days under the effect of the drug. After 3 days, her consciousness was still in her body. She could clearly perceive everything around her, but she couldn't open her eyes or speak. She lost the ability to manage her body. She heard Poundfield's confession. From the conversation between Anna Smith and Jim Smith, she knew that she and Pound were just pawns in their plan. A plan to create immortals and a plan to create geniuses. How she hoped that their plan would end in vain. But it was the opposite. She was pregnant. At the end of 3 months, this child born with conspiracy left the mother's body. This artificially created child had a special smell at birth. Especially when he was emotional, the smell became particularly obvious. Anna Smith and Jim Field clearly expressed their dissatisfaction with this phenomenon. They blamed each other and even almost fought a few times. So, when Tao Bixi appeared, they couldn't wait to give her this hot potato. Tao Bixi was still a child herself, but she still accepted the child unconditionally. And she used all her energy to correct his genetic defects and tried to turn him into a healthy person. Tao Qingxi's voice was very light, without sadness or joy. It was like a bystander telling someone else's story. But everyone present was moved to tears. She obviously did nothing, just because her fertility was a little higher. She had to bear everything she shouldn't bear. How unfair is God? Tao Bixi trembled with both hands and hugged her into her arms. It's all my fault, I should have discovered it earlier. It's all my fault. Tao Qingxi froze at first, but after reacting, he hugged Tao Bixi and patted her. You destroyed the Field family for me, raised my child for me, and saved me, giving me the opportunity to say these words. This is already very good, even if there is only a little time left in life. Being able to control my own body and being able to tell the truth. This is already very good. Chapter 336 Burial. Although she had been lying in the treatment cabin for more than 30 years, everything Tao Qingxi had sensed in these 30 years was engraved in her memory very clearly, and she had never forgotten it. As an outstanding student who was about to graduate from the Department of Pharmacy, and a genius who was even more evil than Tao Bixi, Tao Qingxi was lying down, but her mind was not idle. She had actually pondered over the words of Jim Field and Anna Smith over and over again in these 30 years. Moreover, she had really figured out a little bit. Although it was not quite mature, after speaking it out and verifying it with Li Bangxia and Tao Bixi, it was actually somewhat feasible. Such a genius among geniuses was actually used as an experimental subject. Li Bangxia had reason to suspect that this was entirely due to the envy and jealousy caused by her high talent. It was definitely not just because Tao Qingxi had a strong fertility. Absolutely not. In fact, old man Li Bangxia really guessed it. Back then, it was because the young and ignorant Tao Qingxi was too popular that Anna Smith was dissatisfied and slandered Jim Field. In order to further lock on Tao Qingxi, Anna Smith even tampered with Tao Bixi's medical examination report. However, tampering with a report is a taboo for pharmacists, and Anna Smith will never admit it. Even though Jim Field has passed away and has long been infamous, it is no exception. It is precisely because of the participation of this genius that Anna Smith is afraid of that Li Bangxia and Tao Bixi not only clearly know the formula of this potion, but also have new ideas, and soon the improved potion is produced. In addition, a potion to improve Tao Qingxi's physique was also made. Although it cannot save Tao Qingxi's short life, it can make Tao Qingxi's remaining life a little better. Fortunately, Tao Qingxi is very sober, calm, positive, and optimistic. Even if it is finally determined that she has less than 7 years to live, this genius among geniuses is not discouraged. She followed Tao Bixi back to the Union Military Academy, starting as a laboratory assistant, and relearning her favorite pharmacy. Occasionally, she would go to see Olaf. But throughout her life, she never looked at Pound again. Even though she knew clearly that he was also a pawn. With her help, Tao Bixi's laboratory made rapid progress and steadily surpassed Anna Smith's laboratory. Of course, this is all later. Now, the new drug is in front of Tang Gang and Tang Fan, And the biggest problem of whether to let Tang Meng take the drug is also in front of the father and daughter. Tang Fan firmly opposed it, but could not stand Tang Gang's insistence. The father and daughter discussed for a long time, and finally, Tang Gang personally delivered the drug to Tang Meng's mouth. This drug, which had a good effect on Zhang Awei and Tao Qingxi, also had an effect on Tang Meng. Tang Meng gradually responded. But with it, there is also a rapid aging process. It only took a few hours for a 16-year-old girl to become a white-haired, wrinkled old woman. Seeing the rapid decline of various physical indicators in the monitoring equipment, Tang Gang was full of regret. Tang Meng was like Tao Qingxi. Although she had been in a coma for more than 30 years, her consciousness was extremely clear. She couldn't wait to wake up, and she couldn't wait to turn over and sit up. When she saw herself in the metal panel, and when she saw the strange and old white-haired woman, Tang Meng couldn't help but scream. For Tang Meng, who loves beauty, this scene is more terrible than falling into permanent sleep and being unable to wake up. Tang Meng held her face and murmured, "This is not me, this is not me." The figure in the metal panel also held his face, and the nutrient solution in the treatment cabin shook and made a sound, as if saying, "This is you. This is you." The 16-year-old girl turned into a white-haired, haggard old woman overnight. This discomfort is simply indescribable. Tang Meng collapsed in the treatment cabin, letting the nutrient solution drown her body. Her mind was empty, and she dared not think of anything. Looking at the crazy Tang Meng, Tang Gang's heart was torn, and the annoyance surged over him, drowning him deeply. He fell into deep self-blame. He forgot that Tang Meng was not Tao Qingxi, she was just an ordinary 16-year-old girl. She could not accept her great change. The treatment room fell into an awkward silence. At this time, Tang Fan stood up. He helped the shaky Tang Gang out, and asked Mr. Li Bangsha to get the final physical examination results, and went to the meeting alone to face Tang Meng. Tang Fan did not have much emotion facing her biological mother, who had not fulfilled her mother's responsibilities for a day. Unlike Tang Gang's cautiousness, Tang Fan directly put the bloody facts in front of Tang Meng. Tang Meng herself only had less than a year to live, but her ex-boyfriend Willie Smith was still free. Her rival Zhang Awei was living better than herself, and Anna Smith, who turned her into this, was still at large. These bad news one after another directly awakened Tang Meng. With a broken body like an old woman, with a lot of anger, and with hatred for the Smith siblings, Tang Meng crawled out of the ground. Without spending time with Tang Gang and Tang Fan, Tang Meng couldn't wait to go to Tang's Mecha. The first thing she did was to join William and formulate a plan to encircle and suppress Zhang's Mecha. Tang Fan only then knew that her biological mother, who looked weak and vulnerable, actually had a stronger talent than her in business. According to the plan formulated by Tang Meng and William, Tang Meng finally fulfilled her little dream of defeating her rival in her lifetime. Looking at the notice of Zhang's Mecha's bankruptcy and liquidation, Tang Meng smiled happily. As she smiled, a line of tears slowly slid down her face with ravines. That night, Tang Meng made an exception to organize a family dinner and ate half a bowl of rice. The next morning, when Tang Fan went to wake her up, this woman who prefers to sleep and not wake up fell into deep sleep again and would never open her eyes. Tang Fan and Tang Gang buried this dear relative who had been displaced all his life on Basil Star, where she was born and raised. On the day of the burial, in the drizzle, Willie Smith, dressed in a black suit, stood on a street corner not far away, looking at the direction of the cemetery from a distance, with a dazed expression, and no one knew what he was thinking. Or maybe, he didn't think about anything, just passing by. Who knows? Anyway, no one cares. It's not easy to live in the capital Star. Without the cash cow Zhang, the notorious Willie Smith could not survive on this land. After watching Tang Fan's funeral from a distance, Willie Smith disappeared in the crowd and there was no news of him again. Chapter 337, Terrifying Thoughts. Tao Qingxi was stunned for the whole morning after learning about Tang Meng's death. She felt a bit like the death of a rabbit makes the fox mourn, and all creatures feel sad for their own kind. However, she was stunned for only the whole morning. With only a short life, she soon forgot about the sadness and threw herself into the experiment. Unlike Tao Bixi's conservativeness, Tao Qingxi, who knew that she had little time left, was particularly bold. She dared to think about things that Tao Bixi dared not think about, and she dared to do things that Tao Bixi dared not do. In order to suppress Anna Smith and crack the conspiracy of Jim and Anna, She even ran to the front line of the Bemin star field with her broken body to find the mutant biological materials needed for research. Fortunately, Grandpa Li Bangsha gave a heads up to the expeditionary army in advance, otherwise, she would have been arrested as a spy. When Tao Qingxi learned that all the mutant creatures of the expeditionary army were sent to Grandpa Li Bangsha without leaving a single one. This guy just depends on Grandpa Li Bangsha, staying in Grandpa Li Bangsha's laboratory and won't leave. Grandpa Li Bangsha appears helpless on the surface, but secretly, he boasts to his sponsor Tang Fan and leader Lan Yuan more than once or twice. Although Tao Qingxi's research results belong to the Alliance Military Academy, Grandpa Li Bangsha doesn't care. A single flower does not make spring, but 100 flowers in full bloom make spring. Grandpa Li Bangsha wishes that the Alliance would have more geniuses like Tao Qingxi. Because every small step of their progress is a big step forward for the Alliance's pharmacy. Tao Qingxi has also made visible progress in the semi-open environment of Grandpa Li Bangsha's laboratory. She regretted more than once that she woke up too late and had too little time for research. So, she desperately squeezed every second of time to study and research. Such Tao Qingxi brought unexpected touches to the experimenters in Grandpa Li Bangsha's laboratory. Grandpa Li Bangsha's laboratory ushered in the golden time of frequent research results. Most of these achievements were put into practice by Tang's Mecha, Savage Starship, and the Expeditionary Army. It is true that the Expeditionary Army, Tang's Mecha, and Savage Starship are growing rapidly, but the rare research materials of mutant organisms are also decreasing at a speed visible to the naked eye. Therefore, two voices were heard in the laboratory. One is the theory of suspending the use of mutant biological materials and using all these materials for experimental research. The other is the theory of artificially breeding mutant organisms. There are many supporters of both theories, and there have been fierce verbal conflicts, and even a tendency to develop into physical conflicts. Faced with such a dangerous trend, Mr. Li Bangsha could not sit still. He took the initiative to find Principal Lan Yuanlin and Marshals Song Yuanxi and Blake. Hearing Mr. Li Bangsha's feedback, the three big guys were stunned. They all had the same thoughts in their minds. Could the so-called mutant organisms be experimental products that came out of a certain laboratory? If they really came out of a certain laboratory, then what are their prototypes and bodies? What is the purpose of this laboratory to create these experimental products? How far have they progressed? All of this cannot be considered carefully. Because it is terrifying to think carefully. The three big guys looked at each other, and they all broke out in cold sweats. Finally, Song Yuanqi spoke with difficulty. This matter must be considered in the long run. Old Master Li Bangsha frowned. I can suppress it for a while, but not forever. Song Yuanqi rubbed his temples and said in a deep voice, we must find a way to solve this matter as soon as possible. Li Bangsha also knew the pressure from the three big guys. He slowly stood up and walked towards the door with heavy steps. Halfway through, Old Master Li Bangsha turned his head and said lightly, if it really doesn't work, you can ask Tang Fan. That girl has always been able to create miracles. Ask Tang Fan? Although this suggestion is a bit unreliable, it sounds particularly tempting. Action is worse than thought. The three big guys looked at each other and really ran to the Savage Star region to find Tang Fan. Tang Fan, who was concentrating on studying mecha and starships, was shocked when he heard that these three big guys who would visit him for no reason came together. He was about to run away, but he was blocked by the three big guys at the port just before he was about to step onto the starship. Little girl, you are so mean. I took the time to come to see you in my busy schedule, but you treated me like this. Let it go, girl. This matter. Tang Fan, who was blocked in place, looked up at the sky and choked with speechlessness. It was almost there. Damn it, it was almost there. But if you didn't make it, you didn't make it. No matter how upset you are, it would be useless. Tang Fan took a deep breath, put on an awkward but polite smile, and said loudly, Marshal Song, Marshal Black, Principal An, long time no see. Why did you think of coming to me today? You can't mention running away. Not a word. Who knows that these three big guys will use this matter as an excuse to make unreasonable demands? Tang Fan believed that they could do such a thing. Seeing that Tang Fan never mentioned the matter of running away, a trace of disappointment flashed in the eyes of the three big men. If one plan fails, there is another one. Lan Yuan and Song Yuanxi looked at each other, and held Tang Fan on the left and right. It's rare for everyone to get together. It's almost noon. Let's eat and talk. Let's go to the mutton soup pot. Let's eat and talk. Yes, yes, Yes. Eat and talk. Tang Fan looked at Principal Lan Yuan on the left, and then looked at Marshal Song Yuanshi on the right. The bad premonition became stronger. After 3 rounds of wine and 5 kinds of dishes, the 3 big men went around in circles and finally talked about the main topic. After listening to the 3 big men's explanations, Tang Fan's heart, which had been hanging for a long time, finally let go. You went around in circles for most of the day. Just for this, there's a way. The 3 big men looked at each other and were all happy. Song Yuanshi, Marshal Song, spoke happily. Tell me about it. Tang Fan knocked on the table and said with a smile, since you suspect that this stuff came from the laboratory, then start from the source of the laboratory and check it. Lan Yuan smiled bitterly and said, we have thought about this method. But there are thousands of registered laboratories in the entire alliance, not including those that are not registered. Tang Fan smiled and said, whether it is a registered laboratory or an unregistered one, it needs researchers to support it. There should not be many researchers in the entire alliance who are capable of creating mutant creatures. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 338, Grave Digging. Facing Tang Fan's suggestion, Principal Lan Yuanlin laughed dryly and rubbed his hands. We have investigated the researchers in the entire alliance who are capable of creating mutant creatures. In other words, I'm not stupid. This method is useless. Tang Fan heard this and laughed. The researchers in the entire alliance are capable of creating mutant creatures? Including those who have potential but are unknown and those who have been resurrected from the dead. Tang Fan's seemingly ordinary words made the 3 bosses stunned. Those who have potential but are unknown and those who have been resurrected from the dead. The 3 bosses tasted it carefully and seemed to have tasted something. This girl's ideas are always beyond others' expectations. No wonder Master Li Bangsha would make such a suggestion. It really makes sense. Song Yuanshi and Marshal Black looked at each other and immediately took action. Soon, a long list of names that were ignored by everyone was put on a list in different categories and appeared in the light brains of the 2 marshals. At the top of the list, the names of Jim Field and Solomon Burke were written. The 2 marshals looked at each other, their expressions became particularly serious. The field system, there are many doubts. Song Yuanshi knocked on the table and said coldly, give me 3 days. Tang Fan felt something and looked at Song Yuanshi deeply. You don't need to give me an answer. Tang Fan didn't need an answer. The ones who needed an answer were the millions of people in the alliance who were hurt and lost their homes. Song Yuanshi was very clear about the deep meaning of Tang Fan's words, and Lan Yuan and Blake also understood it. The expressions of the 3 people were a bit solemn. After a long time, Song Yuanshi nodded heavily, dragged Lan Yuan and Blake, and left the Tang's Mecha. The 3 big guys acted separately. Potential pharmacists were questioned in all aspects, from their ancestors to the study and research situation of the day, covering everything. The pharmacists who sacrificed in the past 100 years could not escape the multifaceted investigation, which was so detailed that they almost dug out those buried in the soil. The 3 bosses only took 3 days to shorten the long list to less than 10 people. In addition to the master and apprentice pair of Jim Field and Solomon Burke, the list even included the ancestor of the Zhao family who had long disappeared. Seeing the list sent to him by Marshal Song Yuanshi, Tang Fan couldn't help but frown. Isn't the ancestor of the Zhao family a mecha foundry? How could Marshal Song Yuanshi not hear the implication of Tang Fan's words? He tapped Tang Fan's forehead vaguely and smiled. I remember that you are also a mecha foundry, but you are also a starship foundry, a mecha pilot, and half a commander. Tang Fan narrowed his eyes after coming to his senses and asked, is the ancestor of the Zhao family also a pharmacist? Song Yuanshi, Marshal Song, nodded slowly. He and Jim Field are from the same school, and their strengths are equally matched. Tang Fan couldn't help but rub his back teeth when he heard this. Does Zhao Fan know about this, or does old man Zhao Jiang know about this? Song Yuanshi knew the meaning of the song, rubbed his temples, and sighed. If it is him, the grandfather and grandson will know sooner or later. Tang Fan sighed. It's better to delay it for 1 day. What if it's not? Legal principles are nothing more than human feelings. Since it is Tang Fan's wish, Song Yuanshi doesn't mind helping a little. He looked at her deeply and said okay lightly. Tang Fan bowed deeply to Song Yuanshi. and after hanging up the video, he contacted George as soon as possible. He just sent a list Song Yuanshi gave him to George's light brain, and George, who was smart, immediately understood it. The next second, Tang Fan was sent to the Belmont Star region to support the expeditionary army. As the son of the marshal, George knew very well how much impact this matter would have if it was true. Everyone involved would be despised by the entire alliance. If this matter was really related to Mr. Zhao, George felt that there was no other way to clear his suspicion except to send Tang Fan to a place where information was blocked and isolated from the world. There was no other way to make up for his mistakes except to fight on the front line against mutant creatures. At this moment, both Tang Fan and George had only one thought in their minds: I just hope that this matter really has nothing to do with Mr. Zhao. The two anxious people kept a close eye on the progress of the three bosses. Unfortunately, the three bosses who reduced the list to a few names in 3 days did not make any progress for half a month. Just when the investigation was at a bottleneck, the grave of Ulakami, the former vice president of Cheyenne-Soho Military Academy and Jim Field's junior brother, who was ranked 7th on the investigation list, was stolen. The tomb robbers dug 3 feet deep in the forbidden area of Cheyenne-Soho Military Academy and finally dug out Ulakami's coffin, but they were surprised to find there was nothing in the coffin. Ulakami's tomb was actually an empty tomb. When the news just came out, Tang Fan cast his suspicious eyes on the two marshals Song Yuanshi and Blake. Faced with Tang Fan's questioning, the two marshals didn't know whether to laugh or cry. They had this plan, but they hadn't taken any actual action yet. But would Tang Fan believe their explanation? The two marshals finally experienced the taste of yellow mud falling from the crotch. It's not shit, it's shit. In order to prove their innocence, the two marshals actively searched for the real murderer. However, there is another group of people who are more active than the two marshals. That is, Cheyenne-Soho Military Academy. The tomb in the forbidden area of Cheyenne-Soho Military Academy was dug up by someone. This kind of thing is simply a loud slap in the face. The faces of the upper and lower members of the Cheyenne-Soho Military Academy were swollen at that moment. From the honorary principal, Major General Barton Field, to the cleaners of Cheyenne-Soho Military Academy, all of them took active action. Unfortunately, they have not found the culprit yet. The grave of Jim Field, one of the founders of Cheyenne-Soho Military Academy, located on Cheyenne Long Star, the main star of Cheyenne-Soho Star region, has also been dug up. The empty coffin, placed in front of the entire alliance, is like another loud slap in the face, which also swells the other half of the face of everyone in Cheyenne-Soho Star region. This thunderbolt method is not only suspected by Tang Fan, but also by the Field family. The entire Cheyenne-Soho Star region was suddenly in a state of panic. Everyone who has entered and exited the Cheyenne-Soho Star region in recent years has become the object of suspicion of the Cheyenne-Soho Star region, or the Field family. The first to bear the brunt is not someone else, but the evaporated student Yin Chu. Faced with this suspicion, Yin Chu's student was so bitter that he couldn't say anything. Song Yuanshi and Marshal Blake looked at Tang Fan's face, which looked as if he couldn't express his pain. The anger in their hearts disappeared immediately, and they laughed back without hesitation. Chapter 339 Monitoring. The excavation of the graves of Ulakami and Jim Field caused a great sensation in the alliance. While everyone was concerned about the grave robbers, they also began to gossip about their purpose. Things are different now. In the past, there were burial objects in the coffins. Nowadays, there is nothing in the coffins except the bones. What did the grave robbers see in Ulakami and Jim Field? Or maybe, there was nothing in the two coffins in the cemetery from the beginning? While everyone was discussing, Jim Field's first disciple, Solomon Burke, who was the leader of the Alliance's special research team and committed suicide after failing to accuse the Blue Sea Mecha Academy research team of plagiarizing research results, and was accused and framed by the Blue Sea Mecha Academy research team, was also dug up. Solomon Burke, who was hastily buried in the public cemetery of the capital star, had no tombstone at all, but the grave robbers dug him out accurately. It was hard not to make everyone suspicious. Unlike the graves of Ulakami and Jim Field, Solomon Burke's coffin was no longer empty. A skeleton emitting a corpse odor, wrapped in the pharmacist's uniform that Solomon Burke wore when he died, lay quietly inside. Except for the clothes on the calves being slightly pulled up, there was not much change. No. To be precise, there was something more. A news picture cut out and printed from the Alliance Daily on a certain day more than 30 years ago. The news on the picture can still be found on the Star Network. The content was ordinary. It was just a report about Solomon Burke, a student of the Department of Pharmacy of the First Alliance College, who sustained permanent damage to his right calf in an experiment to save his classmate's life. With this report, Solomon Burke was listed as one of the top 10 people who moved the Alliance that year. The report couldn't be false. But this report was accompanied by the shiny new calf bone on the corpse in the public cemetery. The Star Network immediately went viral. The Alliance Accident Identification Institute was the first to be criticized. The official website of the Alliance Accident Identification Institute was immediately flooded with tens of millions of people protesting. In order to prove its innocence, the Alliance Accident Identification Institute simply published Solomon Burke's pre-employment physical examination report and the body examination report issued by the Alliance Accident Identification Institute. The indicators of the two reports were unexpectedly consistent. Looking at the seal of the First Alliance College-affiliated hospital on Solomon Burke's pre-employment physical examination report, netizens were excited. The official website of the hospital affiliated to the First Alliance Academy, however, suffered a disaster. Just as netizens were actively participating in the search for the real Solomon Burke, one after another technical posts quickly emerged on the Star Network forum. Discussing why there was nothing in the coffins of Willicombe and Jim Field. Discussing when Solomon Burke was replaced. Discussing the purpose of the gravedigger. Experts are among the people, and new discoveries are made every day. Of course, some people also point the finger at the own people of the field department. After all, Willicombe and Jim Field were so secretive, and Solomon Burke's past had been over for more than 30 years. Apart from the people of the field department, few people would know about it, let alone try to verify it. The suspicion on classmate Yin Chu was cleared. But Tao Bixie and Anna Smith, who were far away in the Alliance Military Academy, were targeted by people from the entire Alliance. Of course, compared to Tao Bixie, who has been in the Alliance Military Academy for more than 30 years and who would smash the house with a staff if she disagreed with him, Anna Smith, who is deep-minded and often does some shameful things behind the scenes, obviously has more suspicious points. At least, in the eyes of the Field family in the Cheyenne-Soho Star region, Anna Smith is more suspicious. Seeing that the fire is about to burn on her, Anna Smith can't sit still. She has long been the target of public criticism with her notoriety. If she is suppressed by the Field family again, that picture is too beautiful, Anna can't even imagine it. Ignoring the scientific research project in hand, Anna Smith immediately took a starship to the Cheyenne Star region, Emil Field's private residence, to find this nominal senior brother to explain. Other places are fine, but half of the Cheyenne Star region is Tang Fan's territory. Before Anna Smith's starship landed, Tang Fan's monitoring system, which he had prepared for many years, targeted her. At the same time, the Duke of Rose, Lloyd Weir and the experts of the Expeditionary Information Team also took action separately. There was only one goal, to monitor all the conversations between Anna Smith and Emil Field. Both the two marshals and Tang Fan had an inexplicable feeling, as long as they monitored the conversations between these two old foxes, many problems would be solved. A person's feelings are likely to deceive you. But everyone feels the same. Even Lloyd Weir, as a bystander, feels the same. This matter is worth pondering. Although everyone knows the importance of this matter, they also began to make preparations the moment Anna Smith set off. But in fact, this matter did not go smoothly. If Lloyd Weir had not conquered Emil Field's optical brain, this matter would probably be a failure. For this reason, Marshal Song Yuanshi also wanted to recruit Lloyd Weir. Unfortunately, Lloyd Weir politely rejected it. A group of people waited quietly in Marshal Song Yuanshi's office for most of the day, and then heard Anna Smith's voice from the noise. Unlike the toughness she showed in front of other people, Anna Smith was like a cat with its claws folded, docile and harmless in front of Emil Field. The two talked about polite words for most of the day, and when Lloyd Weir almost fell asleep, they finally got to the point. I swear on my life. If I dug the graves of my teacher, uncle and brother, I would rather shorten my life by 50 years. Anna Smith's voice was very serious. But Emil Field didn't believe her. If it wasn't you, who could it be? Anna Smith wanted to say Tao Bixie, but looking at the young man next to Emil Field who was staring at her, thinking about the relationship between Tao Bixie and him, Anna finally held back. As an insider of my master and uncle's fake death and my brother's escape, I don't need to use this method to verify the facts I already knew. As soon as Anna said this, the scene in Song Yuanshi's office fell into a long silence. Chapter 340 Not Rare. Did Ulrikami and Jim Field fake their deaths? Did Solomon Burke escape? Was Anna Smith an insider? This sentence contained a lot of information, and several bigwigs were slow to react, and Emil Field was no exception. After a long time, he asked with difficulty, "How did you know?" Anna Smith laughed when she heard this. There was an unconcealable bitterness in her laughter. "Why would I know about this kind of thing that even their own son didn't tell me?" "Isn't it because they need someone to clean up the mess and take the blame?" Emil Field said, obviously not believing Anna Smith's words. Not only Emil Field didn't believe it, but everyone in Song Yuanqi's office didn't believe it either. Anna Smith also understood the principle that words are not enough, and took out her evidence from her space button. Emil Field took a look and laughed. "That's it? What can it prove?" After listening to the conversation between the two people, but seeing nothing, everyone sitting in Song Yuanqi's office felt nervous, and a thought flashed through their minds at the same time. What exactly is that thing that Anna took out that can't prove anything? Just when everyone's heart was in their throat, Emil Field spoke again. "Could it be that your kid used this too?" Before Emil Field finished speaking, Anna Smith had already jumped up. "If it weren't for Taubixi's action, Mr. Olaf next to you would not be much better than Titan." Anna's voice was 8 degrees higher, which seemed particularly sharp, and it also successfully made several insiders suddenly realize. The so-called evidence that Anna Smith took out turned out to be the potion that made Zhang Awei fall into coma. Therefore, whether it was Tao Qingxi, President Peng's wife, or Zhang Awei, their coma was not accidental. After hearing Anna's words, Olaf couldn't help but secrete more fragrance from his body, and his expression became much uglier. "Anyway, I have lived upright in this world for more than 30 years. But I don't know if the one from Professor Anna's family can go out and let everyone see." These words were cruel enough. Anna Smith was furious. Her fingers pointing at Olaf kept shaking. For the first time, her eloquent mouth spoke with such difficulty. "What do you mean?" Olaf sneered. "For more than 30 years, I am still using the potion left by my grandfather. It was not easy to improve it a little, but the effect is not as great as the side effects. Professor Anna Smith, if I were you, I would be embarrassed to mention my grandfather." Anna Smith's old face flushed, and she felt bad. Speaking of jealousy, Fang Boyi, who is famous for the Alliance Military Academy, is just a younger brother compared to Anna Smith. Anna Smith was heartbroken by Olaf Field's contempt in his words. "It hurts to be not as talented as others in pharmacy, it hurts to have made no progress for more than 30 years, and it hurts to be slapped in the face by a junior." Anna Smith's eyes were burning with fire. "Olaf Field, don't forget, if it weren't for me, you wouldn't even have the chance to be born." Olaf Field's eyes dimmed a little when he heard this. "I don't care, for Olaf, it really doesn't matter." Chapter 341 The First Generation. Whenever he clearly smelled the smell on his body, whenever he wiped Pound's ass, whenever he saw Tao Qingxi lying on the bed, Olaf Field wished he had never been born. Olaf Field had no gratitude towards Anna Smith, the instigator, but only endless resentment. The resentment filled Olaf's entire body and burst out from his big eyes, which was particularly creepy. Anna Smith was frightened by his eyes full of resentment and couldn't help but take a few steps back. "What's your attitude?" Looking at Anna's cowardly look, Olaf couldn't help but sneer. The attitude that an experimental subject should have towards an experimenter. "Do you expect me to be grateful to you? Miss Smith, you take everything for granted." Anna Smith's face turned the color of pig liver, pointing at the tip of Olaf's nose, unable to speak. It was not until this time that Emil stood up to smooth things over. "He is just a child, he doesn't know what to do. Professor Smith is a generous person, don't take it too seriously." Tang Fan, who was sitting in Song Yuanqi's office, spit out the hot tea as soon as he took a sip of it. Not only did Tang Fan spit out the tea, but others were not much better. Coughs came one after another. "Anna Smith is generous? Goddamn generous. Anyone who knows Anna Smith a little bit can't accept it, okay? Moreover, Olaf is an adult, and Emil can still shamelessly say with confidence, he is just a child, he doesn't know what to do." He was just pointing at the tip of Anna Smith's nose and saying, "You are old, you can't let him go." "What do you mean I am young and I am right? What do you mean I am young and I can be ignorant and I can be forgiven? What do you mean to lie with your eyes open? Everyone understands it thoroughly today." Anna was furious at Emil's shameless behavior, but the situation was stronger than her, and she didn't have the right to lose her temper at all, so she took out another evidence with frustration. It was a sheath beetle that was smaller than the one in the Alliance news and much lighter in color. Looking at the corpse of the sheath beetle, Emil's eyes flickered for a moment. He knew as much about this batch of ancient sheath beetles as Anna Smith did. They came from Field's laboratory. They were the first batch of sheath beetles that appeared in the Alliance. They were also the main raw materials for the fertility potion with special marks in Anna Smith's hands. The first batch of experimental subjects of the fertility potion were not Olaf and Penkaden as everyone thought, but Jim Field's 3 sons. Emil, like Olaf, had no good feelings for this batch of fertility potions and the person who made him. But what was even more tragic than Olaf was that the person he hated was his biological father. That kind of love-hate relationship made Emil Field, the smartest child in the Field family, hide his talent in pharmacy. But even if he had no knowledge of pharmacy, Emil could see that this was a first-generation sheath beetle corpse. Emil knew better that this was one of Anna Smith's few trump cards. But Emil saw through it but didn't say it out loud. Instead, he asked Anna, "What does it mean that you brought a corpse of a mutant creature?" Anna Smith almost jumped up after hearing Emil's words. "This is not an ordinary mutant creature, it is the first generation of sheath beetles." Anna Smith's earth-shattering words did not attract Emil's attention, but shocked the group of people in Song Yuanqi's office. Chapter 342 Confession. If it is said that there is more than one generation of sheath beetles. If it is said that Anna Smith had discovered this mutant creature a long time ago. Or, this mutant creature was originally created by Anna Smith and others. Just a thought, and it successfully made everyone sweat coldly. What's more terrifying is that Mr. Emil Field, who has always been moody and loves to argue with people, did not say anything. What does this mean? Their guess is likely not just a guess. Thinking of this, everyone's backs were basically wet. Everyone's eyes were cast at the same time to the owner of the office, Marshal Song Yuanqi. Song Yuanqi naturally came back to the question that everyone could think of. Knowing what this means, Song Yuanqi's expression was particularly serious. This matter must be investigated. Investigate it clearly, and get to the bottom of it. Give an explanation to the victims and to the people of the entire alliance. Song Yuanqi's words were decisive, and there was an unquestionable firmness in his voice. Tang Fan's mouth corners were raised, and he barely hooked a smile, but it was far from reaching his eyes. "Don't forget to give me a copy when the results come out." Song Yuanqi looked at her deeply, nodded and said okay. Tang Fan thanked Song Yuanqi and changed his posture to sit properly. However, everyone could see that this little ancestor was in a bad mood. Song Yuanqi and Mr. Li Bangsha, 2 insiders, knew the reason why this little ancestor was in a bad mood. They exchanged glances with each other, but said nothing. Compared with comforting Tang Fan, monitoring the conversation between Emil and Anna Smith was obviously more important. Besides, Tang Fan was not the kind of person who could not distinguish between the important and the urgent. Such a loss was just a matter of a moment. When Anna Smith began to talk about the origin of the first generation of mutant creatures and the origin of the subsequent generations of mutant creatures, the attention of everyone in Song Yuanqi's office immediately shifted to this confession. Emil and Olaf listened quietly, their expressions were a little solemn. But Anna Smith, who was immersed in her glorious years and could not extricate herself, did not notice it at all. Lauer even cleverly recorded this audio clip and presented it as evidence in court. Anna Smith's confession successfully convinced Emil and saved Song Yuanqi a lot of effort. Tang Fan didn't have to wait too long before Song Yuanqi put the investigation report in front of him. Song Yuanqi's people looked for any clues Anna Smith mentioned with a magnifying glass. Not only were the clues found, but they also involved many high-level members of the alliance. However, in order to avoid alerting the enemy, they did not touch them. Most of them were similar to what Anna Smith said, but the part that Anna did not say was the most important. For example, the whereabouts of Ulakami, Jim Field and Solomon Burke. For example, how did they put these mutant creatures on so many planets? For example, in addition to the places that have already erupted, how many places have been buried by this group of crazy people as a time bomb of mutant creatures? For example, in addition to Penkaden and his son, how many people are they controlling? For example, what is the extent of their research on mutant organisms? All these mysteries are waiting for Song Yuanqi and others to solve. This road is a long and arduous journey. Chapter 343 Good. Tang Fan received Song Yuanqi's investigation results and immediately forwarded a copy to Tang Gang, who then began to read them. As Tang Fan expected, The investigation results were not only superficial, but also official. Since Song Yuanxi could not give her the answer she wanted, she would go and find it herself. She, Tang Fan, always dared to do what others dared not do. With Song Yuanxi's investigation report, Anna Smith's confession, and the notes of the ancestors of the Zhao family, Tang Fan was more purposeful than the group of people under Song Yuanxi. After all, suspicion does not require evidence. Bold assumptions and careful verification will never be wrong. Raising hay to catch rabbits. Tang Fan accidentally found out about an old acquaintance. After graduation, she contacted Yin Yulan as Tang Fan for the first time. Looking at each other's face, both of them felt as if they were in another world. "How are you recently?" Yin Yulan spoke first. Tang Fan reluctantly curled the corners of his mouth, but did not speak. He just sent Anna Smith's confession and the evidence he had collected. Yin Yulan clicked on what Tang Fan sent her, and the more she read, the more shocked she was. When she finished reading, she didn't know what to say. After being with Tao Bixi for so many years, she never knew that her teacher had a hobby like tomb robbing. Moreover, it specifically targets their own people. Yin Yulan felt something was wrong the more she thought about it, and her beautiful phoenix eyes narrowed slightly under her thick bangs. "No matter how I think about it, I feel that there is something fishy about this. Why don't you come to school and we talk to Professor Tao?" Tang Fan sighed and laughed. "What identity do you think I can use to come here? What right do they have to tell me?" Yin Yulan was stunned for a moment before she realized that this guy actually had a vest. Yin Yulan rubbed his temples and sighed. "I'll try it for you." Tang Fan looked at Yin Yulan, who finally came to his senses, and finally had a smile on his face. "It's done. There are snacks." Yin Yulan rubbed his nose and laughed dryly. "Am I the kind of person who only knows how to eat?" Tang Fan didn't say anything, but her eyes were very telling. That kind of eyes that see through but don't say it out loud is more hurtful than saying it out loud, and Yin Yulan was so angry that she hung up the video call directly. Although she hung up the video call, Yin Yulan didn't forget what she should do. She really took the things given by Tang Fan and went directly to Professor Tao Bixi. Professor Tao Bixi looked confused. Instead, Tao Qingxi, who was standing aside, took the initiative to stand up and confessed, "I did all this, and it has nothing to do with your Professor Tao." The look of one person doing the work and one person taking the responsibility made Tao Bixi angry. "Do you know what you are doing?" Tao Qingxi nodded seriously. "Of course I know. I did what you wanted to do but didn't dare to do." Tao Qingxi's words made Tao Bixi and Yin Yulan stunned on the spot. Seeing the two of them dumbfounded, Tao Qingxi laughed. "After dying once, you will not only know how precious life is, but also know what to do to make this limited life meaningful." Tao Bixi looked at Tao Qingxi deeply, tears streaming down her face. "Does it have to be like this?" Tao Qingxi's fingers gently stroked her face and said softly, "Some things must be done by someone. I am a dying person, and there is not much I can do. With my broken body, in exchange for a prosperous and peaceful life for everyone in the alliance, it can be considered a worthy death." Tao Bixi grabbed her sleeve, tears streaming down her face. "What does the prosperity and peace of everyone in the alliance have to do with me? I just want you to be fine." The shallow smile on Tao Qingxi's face suddenly solidified on his face. "Fine? What a tiny wish." But it was already impossible when she fell into Anna Smith's hands more than 30 years ago. Chapter 344, Unknown. "Bixi, I thought you understood." Tao Qingxi's voice was full of bitterness. Whether it was Tao Qingxi and Chang Meng, or Olaf and Tang Fan, they had done nothing, but they were forced to bear all that they shouldn't have to bear. Even Yin Yulan, who was watching silently, closed her eyes, unable to bear to watch any longer. At the moment when Yin Yulan lowered her head, in order to divert Tao Bixi's attention, Tao Qingxi actually turned the spearhead towards her. "Student Yin has been staying in the laboratory for a long time and has never gone out. I wonder where student Yin got this secret gossip from." Looking at Tao Qingxi's posture of "if you don't explain it to me today, don't even think about going anywhere," Yin Yulan couldn't help but take 2 steps back. Before she touched the threshold, she bumped into a warm body. Professor Tao Bixi stared at her with red eyes and sneered, "Qingxi knows everything about student Yin's problem. Shouldn't student Yin also give an explanation for Qingxi's problem? There are wolves in front and tigers behind, with no way out." Yin Yulan simply gave up and sat on the ground, turning on the light brain. When Tang Fan's strange yet familiar face appeared in front of Tao Qingxi and Tao Bixi, both of them were stunned for a moment. How did these two people who had nothing to do with each other know each other? But think about it. As a long-term partner of the Expeditionary Force and the Blackwater Army, it is reasonable for Tang Fan to know Yin Yulan. It is also because of this that it becomes reasonable for Yin Yulan to get Anna Smith's secret confession. Seeing that Tao Qingxi and Tao Bixi did not see through Tang Fan's vest, Yin Yulan breathed a sigh of relief and introduced the three strangers. Compared to Yin Yulan and Tao Bixi, who were obsessed with pharmacy research, Tang Fan was simply a smart person. With Yin Yulan's intentional send points, she quickly understood the whole story and couldn't help but look up to Tao Qingxi. Ms. Tao Qingxi, as both victims, don't you think there should be more room for cooperation between us? Tao Qingxi looked at the girl with a small face, short hair, and curved eyebrows on the other end of the optical computer and curled her lips. Little girl, interesting. Tao Qingxi touched her chin and casually reported her optical computer number to Tang Fan. Soon, Tang Fan's friend request came over. Tao Qingxi accepted the application with a smile, but did not accept Tang Fan's training request. It was not until he left the side of Yin Yulan and Tao Bixi that Tao Qingxi called back. That night, the two chatted for a long time and talked a lot. As for what was said, only God knows, Tao Qingxi knows, Tang Fan knows, and no one else knows. However, from that day on, Tao Qingxi slowly ended several projects in his hands, and began to purchase a large number of materials to produce high-concentration common drugs. From that day on, Tang Fan also quietly began to prepare for the trip. 7 days later, Yin Yulan received a package from the Savage Star domain, and a stack of letters. From Tang Gang's family to Song Yuanqi's family, to William's family, everyone who was close to Tang Fan had a share, and no one was left out. Tao Qingxi was much more straightforward, and only left a letter to Tao Bixi and Olive Field respectively. Two strangers actually formed an alliance quickly with the help of a star network. Abandoning everyone around him, he went to pursue the so-called truth. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 345, So Close. There was no record of departure or entry. Two living people just disappeared in the vast sea of stars. Not to mention other people, even Tao Qingxi herself found it a little incredible. When this petite and cute girl said that she could take her away without alarming anyone, Tao Qingxi didn't believe it. But when the girl with delicate eyebrows and eyes in the optical brain appeared in front of her in a mecha she had never seen before, Tao Qingxi was stunned. She obediently followed the suggestion of this girl with clear eyes, thin lips and a slight smile, who made people feel good about her, and entered the maintenance compartment of the mecha. Then, she watched this petite girl, with extremely skilled skills, driving the mecha, leaving the planet Sumer and rushing towards the southwest. And, 18 minutes later, it accurately docked next to a hovering small starship. Before Tao Qingxi came to her senses, the girl performed a fierce two-way operation in front of her. Before Tao Qingxi could come to her senses, the hatch of the starship had already opened, and the mecha had slowly entered the starship. When Tao Qingxi found that there was no one in this huge starship except Tang Fan and herself, she finally understood what the operation she had just seen meant. This petite girl in front of her actually was operating a mecha and a small starship at the same time. No wonder she dared to guarantee herself. But it is said that you are a mecha foundry master. Tang Fan's hands danced quickly on the dashboard of the starship, and his mouth was not idle. I graduated from the Mecha Foundry department of the Blue Sea Mecha Academy. But I don't have the Alliance Mecha Foundry Master level certificate, so I can't be called a real Mecha Foundry Master. Tao Qingxi couldn't help but burst out laughing. What a coincidence. I don't have it either. Not only did she not have a level certificate, she didn't even have a graduation certificate from the Alliance's first academy. But what does it matter? Tang Fan also realized this and smiled embarrassedly. The small starship flexibly passed through the asteroid belt near the planet Sumer. Tang Fan quickly set the starship to autopilot mode, then scratched his head. I don't mean anything else. Tao Qingxi waved his hand nonchalantly. No need to explain. I understand. Many people are used to using certificates to measure a person's ability, and will only use a piece of paper to measure. Although Tang Fan, as the head of Tang's mecha, has stood at the top of mecha casting, she will still not be recognized by some people because she does not have that piece of paper. I really don't know, is it our sorrow or their sorrow? Tao Qingxi's words directly hit Tang Fan's heart. She sighed, smiled bitterly and shook her head. Who knows? The two looked at each other and shut their mouths silently. The small black starship was like a ghost passing through the night, silently shuttling through the sea of stars. The latest invisible materials and equipment on the starship allowed it to perfectly avoid all monitoring. Tang Fan stopped at the undeveloped asteroid W808 for a few hours. In addition to preparing enough drinking water, repairing the starship and mecha, and replacing the energy source, these routine operations required stopping for preparation. More importantly, W808 was the planet at the edge of the Cheyenne Star region, close to the Cheyenne-Soho Star region. Especially the Cheyenne-Soho Military Academy. Chapter 346 Forbidden Land. W808 is very similar to that of the Savage Star region. With its lush vegetation, planet W808 can easily accommodate 10 or 8 people, let alone one Tang Fan. Tang Fan is like a fish in water when he lives on this planet. It is Tang Fan who prepares drinking water. It is Tang Fan who repairs starships and mechas. It is Tang Fan who replaces energy sources. It is still Tang Fan who prepares food and monitors the Cheyenne-Soho Military Academy. Of course, Tao Qingxi is not idle either. She is busy collecting and organizing medicine materials and making medicines. More importantly, she provides Tang Fan with a monitoring target and scope, the Cheyenne-Soho Military Academy. The Forbidden Area. The forbidden area of the Cheyenne-Soho Military Academy was originally unguarded. At least, it was not guarded before Tao Qingxi dug Ulakami's grave. This is also the key to Tao Qingxi's successful grave digging. But when Tao Qingxi succeeded in digging the grave, all this became history. All day long, 12 waves of patrols wandered around the forbidden area. It was a little better during the day, but at night, there were actually patrol teams organized by students on a voluntary basis. Watching the Cheyenne-Soho Military Academy's operation, Tao Qingxi felt strong regret for what he had done for the first time. If he had known this would happen, he should have done the grave digging and the creation of the forbidden area together. It's simply too unscientific to go twice. Fortunately, when Tang Fan entered school for the second time under a vest, he learned a lot of data analysis knowledge from Jin Ruian. With his learning and application, Tang Fan only took a week to figure out the patrol routes and rules of the Cheyenne-Soho Military Academy's forbidden area and made a perfect plan. On that day, under the cover of night, 2 daring women took only 1.5 hours to sneak into the strictly guarded forbidden area of the Cheyenne-Soho Military Academy under the eyes of everyone in the Cheyenne-Soho Military Academy. The reason why the Cheyenne-Soho Military Academy did not arrange people to patrol the forbidden area before the grave digging incident was not because of lax management, but because there was really nothing to guard in the forbidden area of the Cheyenne-Soho Military Academy. This forbidden area is located on an island in the middle of Jingxi Lake. The island is not big, only about 2 acres. The island is full of ghost-clapping trees. At night, the shadows of the trees are swaying, which is very creepy. In addition, in the center of the island, there is a tomb of the former Vice President Ulakami. Except for a weirdo like Tao Qingxi, who had come here for no reason. Only Tao Qingxi not only came to dig up other people's tombs, but also brought an outsider to visit again. Moreover, the young lady who revisited the old place went straight to the topic without hesitation, the tomb of Ulakami. Tang Fan looked at the fresh soil in front of him, and the corners of his mouth couldn't help twitching. How did Ulakami offend you, young lady? Tell me, I will definitely learn from it. Tao Qingxi rolled his eyes silently, took out a shovel from his space buckle, and threw it in front of Tang Fan. Instead of talking nonsense to me, you might as well hurry up and work. Tang Fan picked up the shovel, put his hands together, and said to Ulakami's tombstone, I didn't mean to offend, but the situation forced me. Every grievance has its perpetrator. And every debt has its creditor. If you have any grudges or complaints, just find this young lady, but don't come to me. Miss Tao Qingxi didn't say a word about Tang Fan's weird behavior, but just, tisk. Tao Qingxi thought that Tang Fan's weird behavior was another manifestation of passive sabotage. Who knew that Tang Fan, who worked hard, was so efficient? Chapter 347 Expert. The opportunity for Tang Fan to change from passive slacking to active participation was just a few simple words from Tao Qingxi. You said that the last place where the ancestor of the Zhao family appeared was the Cheyenne-Soho Star region. There are only 2 most likely places. One is here. The other is the main star of the Cheyenne-Soho Star region, Cheyenne Long Star. Tang Fan looked at Tao Qingxi in disbelief. The grave digging thing should not be as simple as you said at the beginning. Tao Qingxi rolled his eyes. I hid it well, but unfortunately I met someone with a stronger curiosity than me. Tang Fan hurriedly bowed and said sincerely, I'm sorry. It's all my fault. Tao Qingxi didn't say anything, just a little signal with his eyes. Tang Fan looked at the fresh oil on the tomb of Ulikmi, pushed his back teeth, took out a bunch of parts from his space buckle, and quickly tinkered with it. The mecha casting department was not studied in vain. The pile of parts that Tao Qingxi had never seen or heard of, in Tang Fan's hands, soon turned into a strange-looking mechanical arm. Tang Fan put the gadget in his hand, and in less than 10 minutes, Wu Li Ke Mumi's grave, along with the fresh oil on it, was moved to a place 5 meters away. Tao Qingxi was stunned. If she had known there was such an operation, why did she dig it one shovel at a time? Wouldn't it be better to order a robotic arm? Thinking about how hard she worked back then, Tao Qingxi felt that she was stupid. Tang Fan put away his robotic arm, clapped his hands, and asked, Sister, what are we going to do next? The word sister successfully brought Tao Qingxi back to her senses. She looked at the pit dug by Tang Fan and frowned. The last time I dug up the coffin, I clearly felt that there was something underneath. Tang Fan couldn't help but frowning. Didn't I dig deep enough? Or, has it been moved away by someone? Thinking of the latter possibility, Tang Fan's expression was particularly ugly. Tao Qingxi shook her head, although I don't know what the thing is. But Jim Field and Ulikami didn't move it. Solomon Burke didn't move it either. This can only mean, there is a reason why it can't be moved. Tang Fan narrowed his eyes. So, it wasn't moved, but someone used a trick. Tang Fan's reaction speed was simply amazing. Tao Qingxi couldn't help but look at her more, and then began to look around. But the two grave diggings were both at night, and it was not so easy to determine the direction. Seeing that the patrol was about to arrive, Tang Fan could only pull Tao Qingxi together and lie in the newly dug pit. Although they knew that Ulikami's tomb was an empty tomb, Tang Fan and Tao Qingxi were both very uncomfortable. The two ladies leaned against the pit wall as much as possible, like two newly born geckos. Weak, helpless, and pitiful. Fortunately, Tang Fan's displacement skill was too outstanding, and the patrol officers did not find any clues. After the patrol officers did a routine check, they quickly left. Just a few minutes seemed like a century to Tang Fan and Tao Qingxi. After waiting for the patrol officers to leave, Tang Fan immediately climbed out of the grave. But Miss Tao Qingxi, who was brought into the grave by Tang Fan, was not as skilled as her. She tried several times but failed to climb out. She even missed a step and fell flat on her butt. Chapter 348 Discovery. As a genius among geniuses, Miss Tao Qingxi was actually stumped by a small earth pit. Tao Qingxi, who was sitting on the ground, blushed with embarrassment. Tang Fan really couldn't help it, turned his face away, laughed secretly for a while, and then jumped into the pit again. She silently helped Tao Qingxi up from the ground, and while Tao Qingxi was patting the dust off his body, she tried to find a foothold for this senior who was not very strong. However, Miss Tao Qingxi's earth-shaking fall not only lost her face, but also her courage. Tang Fan found several points, but Miss Tao Qingxi was not very satisfied. Out of helplessness, Tang Fan could only take out the shovel sponsored by Miss Tao Qingxi and manually dig a foothold for Miss Tao Qingxi. Compared with Miss Tao Qingxi, whose physical strength was rapidly declining, Tang Fan's physical strength was much better. In less than a minute, the first foothold was completed. The scale was not inferior to a small step at all. Tao Qingxi silently gave Tang Fan a thumbs up. Tang Fan smiled triumphantly and immediately started to dig the second point. But after the second shovel, Tang Fan paused. She jumped back to the bottom of the pit, pulled Miss Tao Qingxi's sleeve, and said excitedly, "Senior, take a look." As smart as Tao Qingxi was, she immediately came to her senses. She snatched the shovel from Tang Fan's hand, stepped on the landing point with a big stride, and slightly applied force to the place where Tang Fan had just shoveled. The strange yet familiar touch made her mouth rise. She used the shovel to remove the loose oil on it, and a gray-black metal edge appeared in front of Tang Fan and Tao Qingxi. Miss Tao Qingxi smiled. But Tang Fan on the side couldn't laugh. As the best student of the mecha casting department of Blue Sea Mecha Academy in the past 50 years. As a woman with the most mineral deposits in the alliance. As the last inheritor of the knowledge of Tang's and Zao's mecha casting. She had never seen this special metal with a dark gray color, hard texture, and a crisp sound. Tang Fan's face was gloomy. He took out a tiny metal detector from the space buckle and pointed it at the edge. Soon, the instrument flashed a red light. At the same time, 4 words were clearly written on it: no such thing. Tang Fan's heart sank to the bottom of the valley. Tao Qingxi also noticed Tang Fan's abnormality at this moment and frowned. What's wrong? Tang Fan silently handed the instrument to Tao Qingxi, and Tao Qingxi couldn't help but gasp. You are still young and have a long way to go. You can go back the same way and pretend that this has never happened. Tang Fan raised his eyebrows. What about you? Tao Qingxi raised a bitter smile at the corner of his mouth. Of course I will continue. Take your life, which is not much time left, to exchange for a truth. This deal is worthwhile? Is this deal worthwhile? Not necessarily. Without Tang Fan's help, a woman who can't even jump out of a grave pit wants to discover the truth in the restricted area of Cheyenne Seoul Military Academy, where patrols are densely populated? This is tantamount to sending yourself to death. But as smart as Tao Qingxi is, he would rather die than go back in disgrace. Is it because he cares too much about the truth? Or is it because he cares too much about face? Or maybe, both? Or? Tang Fan pressed his back teeth and said in a deep voice, even in this situation, you still don't want to confess to me? Tao Qingxi looked straight at Tang Fan and raised his eyebrows. What to confess? Tang Fan whispered in Tao Qingxi's ear. Why do you want to risk your life to find the whereabouts of Jim Field, Ulukami and Solomon Burke? Chapter 349 Confession. Tao Qingxi turned his head and looked at Tang Fan deeply. With Miss Tang's strength, the alliance is so big that she can go anywhere. Why did you bring me along when I am powerless and have not much time left? Isn't it because you have guessed my purpose a long time ago? Tang Fan touched his chin and smiled. Guessing is just guessing after all. How can it be as true and reliable as what you say? Tao Qingxi burst out laughing. It's been a long time since I met a girl as smart and beautiful as you. If it weren't for the genetic defect of Olaf, I would have wanted to kidnap you to my house to be my wife. Tang Fan raised his eyebrows. Are you sure? Tao Qingxi looked at Tang Fan's eyes that saw through the world, smiled bitterly and shook his head. Tang Fan sighed and laughed dryly. Since it's a fruitless matter, let's put it aside for now. Let's talk about the seniors risking their lives to find the whereabouts of Jim Field, Ulukami and Solomon Burke. Tao Qingxi failed to change the subject and was ruthlessly exposed by Tang Fan. She smiled bitterly and realized that she couldn't escape tonight. After a long silence, she finally spoke faintly. As a member of Jim Field's laboratory, although I am not as close to him as Anna Smith and Solomon Burke, I am not as far away from him as everyone imagines. Unlike Bixie's simplicity and dullness, I am more sensitive to the changes around me. The raw materials coming in and out of the laboratory, especially those that I don't recognize, have successfully attracted my interest. Taking the opportunity to clean the laboratory, I went through a lot of hardships and finally got a little bit. After many studies, I finally determined that this is a biological material. It is not uncommon for biological materials to be used as medicine in pharmacy. What is rare is that I can't even analyze what species it comes from. Young people always have a strong curiosity about unknown things. I began to deliberately observe Jim Field, Anna Smith, Solomon Burke. People leave their names behind, and wild geese leave their voices behind. Even if you are a cautious person, as long as you observe carefully, you can always find some clues. I soon learned the direction of their research and what those raw materials were. At that time, the first thought that flashed through my mind was to get rid of the simple and dull Bixie as soon as possible. When I finally sent Bixie away and was about to find a chance to leave, I fell into Anna Smith's trap. I knew everything, but I couldn't move my body. I couldn't save myself, call for help, or even commit suicide. At that moment, no one knew how desperate I was. I thought this was the most unbearable moment in my life, but I didn't expect that there would be something even more unbearable waiting for me. I no longer had the freedom to speak and move, and I was completely reduced to their experimental subject. From hair to toenails, from skin to blood, from top to bottom, from inside to outside, there was no part that they had not used for research and analysis. If the piece of meat in my stomach was not named Field, I believe they could have done something even more exaggerated and excessive. It was also during that period that I realized what my teacher, uncle, brother, sister, what they had done. At this point, Tao Qingxi's face was a little horrified, and his body shuddered involuntarily. Tang Fan raised his eyebrows. Didn't you tell Grandpa Li Bangsha about it? Research on mutant creatures. Chapter 350, Bones. Tao Kingxi smiled bitterly and shook his head. But in the laboratory, in addition to mutant biological research, there are also living experiments. Tang Fan raised his eyebrows. You? Tao Kingxi touched his back teeth. Not just me. Tang Fan was stunned when he heard this. What do you mean? Those voices from more than 30 years ago, like every nightmare, echoed in Tao Kingxi's ears, lingering. Every time Jim Field connects with Anna Smith, I can clearly hear the roar of beasts and the wailing of people in turn. Tang Fan's heart shuddered, and some discordant fragments flashed through his mind. How serious is it? 8 out of 10 people died. No, maybe more than 9 out of 10. The living ones are all without names, only numbers, neither human nor beast, monsters. The last 2 words were particularly difficult for Tao Kingxi to say. After all, from a certain level, her son and Tang Fan in front of her were not the products of nature. Mentioning this to Tang Fan was a bit like pointing at a monk and scolding a bald donkey. However, Miss Tao Kingxi could not find a better adjective to describe it. Tang Fan felt a little uncomfortable after hearing what Tao Kingxi said, but it was only for a moment. Although Tao Kingxi was not honest enough, from her attitude towards Pound and Olaf, we can tell that she is a smart and measured woman. What's more, her own son, Olaf Field, is not much better than her. Tao Kingxi can't do such a thing as blaming someone else. After thinking through this link, Tang Fan was finally able to think carefully about Tao Kingxi's simple words. The first question in front of her was, where do the people in the laboratory come from? Tao Kingxi really knew the answer to this question. It's a long story. Tang Fan raised his eyebrows and said coldly, let's make it short. Tao Kingxi was blocked enough and said unhappily, do you know the Black Skull Star Pirates, the most notorious Black Skull Star Pirates in the entire alliance? Tang Fan not only didn't know, but she also contributed to the destruction of the Black Skull Pirates. It's just that Tang Fan kept his achievements and fame to himself, so this matter is not known to others. You mean, the experimental samples all came from the merchant ships robbed by the Black Skull Pirates? Tao Kingxi, who was still considering the wording, raised his head suddenly after hearing Tang Fan's words, and said in astonishment, you know the Black Skull Pirates and the Field family? Tang Fan smiled when he heard it. I'm afraid you forgot that the Black Skull's lair is the Savage Star region, where the Tang family's main mecha factory is located. Tao Kingxi is such a smart person that she came to her senses after a little thought. She smiled bitterly and said, just as you said, Jim Field and his men, under the banner of the Black Skull Pirates, robbed merchant ships everywhere. The property was used to support the laboratory and the pirates, and the people were sent to the laboratory for genetic modification. Tao Kingxi's description was as subtle as possible, but Tang Fan still heard the blood and cruelty in it. The success of the Field family was built on the bones of 1,000 people. It was despicable, but they could not be brought to justice based on Tao Kingxi's confession alone. What's more, the culprit, Jim Field, was already dead. Tang Fan's guess was confirmed, but she was not happy at all. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.